Chapter 581, The Book of Ravenclaw and the Protection of the Iron Guard. The mysterious disappearance of the German Minister of Magic has sent shockwaves through the International Confederation of Wizards, an organization of paramount importance in the magical community, akin to the Muggles' United Nations, albeit with significantly more authority and responsibility, particularly in enforcing the international statute of wizarding secrecy. I recall Dumbledore once held the presidency, and Grindelwald, too, sought the position, John mused, stroking his chin thoughtfully. Dumbledore's tenure was, in part, my doing. Grindelwald's ambition at the time had cast a shadow over Europe, threatening the stability we took for granted. Has the German minister been abducted, or is he in hiding? John pondered aloud, snapping his fingers. A newspaper in front of him burst into flames, which slowly died down, leaving no trace. Regardless, with Dumbledore involved, he'll confront his old adversary. The International Confederation convened in England, a deliberate choice given the presence of the magical world's foremost leaders, where even Grindelwald dared not tread. The British Minister of Magic, Barty Crouch Sr., addressed the assembly. The German minister has been missing for over 3 days. His fate remains uncertain, announced Yale Fan, head of the German Magical Law Enforcement Department, his voice grave. However, I suspect Grindelwald's hand in this, possibly even murder. That's a serious accusation, countered the French delegate. Grindelwald is under constant surveillance, but he still commands his followers, his so-called saints, Yale Fan retorted, frustration evident. His thirst for power remains unquenched. We cannot dismiss this theory, Barty Crouch Sr. interjected, steering the discussion. The question is, why now? The room's attention turned to Yale Fan, who faced scrutiny. Grindelwald committed grave crimes in Germany and fled. Why wasn't he apprehended immediately by your department? Inquired Crouch Sr., voicing a concern that perhaps Grindelwald had infiltrated the German ministry. He's cunning, Yale Fan admitted, but Crouch Sr. was unimpressed. That's hardly an excuse. Yale Fan conceded. Indeed, we failed to capture him. His followers sacrificed themselves to ensure his escape. Despite their confessions to his crimes, Grindelwald himself remains elusive, a specter haunting us. The conversation shifted. What of Dumbledore? Yale Fan pressed. He's the only one who can confront Grindelwald. We cannot depend solely on him, Crouch Sr. responded firmly. Dumbledore's era is nearing its end. Yale Fan, incredulous, protested. He remains our best hope against Grindelwald. This is known. The assembly was divided. Some shared Yale Fan's sentiment, recognizing the need for Dumbledore's expertise. Yet, others sought a new champion. The French delegate boldly suggested, the one who vanquished Voldemort could be our answer. Murmurs filled the room as the name John Wick, previously known as Johnny Silverhand, was mentioned. If he could defeat Voldemort, surely he can confront Grindelwald. Dumbledore's wisdom is invaluable, but perhaps it's time for new blood, some agreed, while others, including Yale Fan, remained skeptical. Have you forgotten his ambition? Yale Fan challenged those swayed by the notion. Without the promise of power, he will not aid us. This assertion sparked a broader recognition of the dilemma they faced. John Wick, a figure of considerable influence and ambition, had previously unified factions and purged adversaries, demonstrating a capacity for both leadership and ruthlessness. The question remained, could such a person be the key to their current crisis, or would his involvement bring unforeseen consequences? The debate continued, reflecting the complex dynamics and uncertain alliances within the magical world. More terrifying than Grindelwald, the rise of such a power is the last thing the International Federation of Wizards wants to see. Had been more willing to confront Grindelwald's resurgence than to see Dumbledore's return or to rely on someone like John Wick. Barty Crouch Sr. surveyed the gathered crowd, sensing that many harbored a desire for Dumbledore's leadership once more. We can't blindly depend on others, Barty Sr. articulated, capturing everyone's attention. Whether it's Dumbledore or Johnny Silverhand, in the end, we're relying on the strength of others. The International Federation of Wizards represents the pinnacle of magical governance. Are we truly incapable of dealing with Grindelwald, having already faced defeat? Barty Sr.'s words prompted reflection among the attendees. It was clear that the relative peace of recent years had lulled the Federation into a sense of complacency. Voldemort's reign of terror had been confined to a single country and thus hadn't directly impacted them. However, Grindelwald's threat was more widespread and chaotic. Grindelwald's power might not surpass Voldemort's, but coming from Barty, who had a history of confronting Voldemort, his words carried weight. Both factions, whether followers of John Wick or Dumbledore's loyalists, united in their resolve to eliminate Grindelwald. Following the meeting, nations issued simultaneous warrants for Grindelwald's arrest. At Hogwarts, in the hall, John set aside the newspaper and focused on a book with a silver-white cover. This tome, a compilation of Ravenclaw's knowledge, contained a wealth of mysterious and ancient magic. Ravenclaw, known for her well-rounded magical abilities, might have been slightly less adept at dueling than Gryffindor, but her mastery in various other magical disciplines was unparalleled. John perused the book, noting perfect potion formulas and spells, including some that were considered taboo. One spell, Iron Guard Protection, caught his attention. Unlike the Patronus charm, which served as a defense against dark magic, this spell summoned a guardian from elemental forces. Depending on where it was cast, the spell could conjure guardians of water, earth, or other elements, embodying a form of temporary alchemy. However, the spell had its drawbacks. As John demonstrated, by casting it on a glass of water, the resulting water guardian lacked self-awareness and required constant direction from the wizard. This limitation meant that without vigilant control, the guardian could easily be taken by surprise. It's only effective under specific conditions, John mused, recognizing the spell's limitations. As class time approached, John headed to the Forbidden Forest. He found Hagrid, who had fashioned a mask from his beard to cover injuries sustained from a basilisk. John suggested, "Why don't you just shave your beard?" "No, Olympia likes my beard," Hagrid replied, showing reluctance to part with it. John noted Hagrid's mention of Madame Maxime, indicating that their relationship was progressing well. However, he couldn't help but think that Madame Maxime might not appreciate Hagrid's current disheveled appearance. John observed Hagrid with a mixture of amusement and concern. "Hagrid, trust me, by the time Madame Maxime sees you, your beard will have already started to grow back," he assured him. John understood Hagrid's determination. Once he set his mind on something, he rarely backed down. However, convincing him to shave might give him a sense of achievement and persuade him to abandon the idea of completely removing his beard. Upon hearing John's words, Hagrid felt a surge of trust. In his eyes, John had an unparalleled understanding of Madame Maxime, making his advice invaluable. With a heavy heart and a sense of reluctance, Hagrid agreed to shave his beard, an act that resulted in the unfortunate demise of a razor. His beard, thick and wiry, proved too much for the tool. Indeed, the strands of his beard were so robust that they could easily be used as material for making ropes, a testament to the giant blood running through his veins. This moment highlighted not only the lengths to which Hagrid was willing to go for Dame Maxime, but also the deep bond of friendship and trust he shared with John. It was a small, yet significant testament to the connections formed within the walls of Hogwarts, connections that often led to unexpected acts of personal transformation. Chapter 582, Hannah and Hufflepuff's Friendship. After the herbalism class concluded, Hannah hurried out, leaving her friends Ernie and Justin bewildered and unable to catch up. Where is she off to in such a rush? Justin wondered aloud, his confusion mirrored in Ernie's expression. I'm not sure. She's been acting unusually lately, Ernie shared, lowering his voice. I even saw her sneaking out after curfew yesterday. Really? Justin was incredulous. Is she out of her mind? Filch is more terrifying than any ghost. Even as a prefect, she wouldn't be immune to his wrath, Justin added, recalling his own harrowing encounter with Filch during a late-night kitchen raid. The memory of being caught and the subsequent punishment of trophy polishing haunted him. Meanwhile, Hannah had caught up with Neville Longbottom and tapped him on the shoulder, slightly out of breath from her sprint. Hi, Neville, she greeted, her cheeks flushed and her voice uneven from the exertion. Neville turned, surprised. Hannah, what's up? They were both herbalism classmates and frequently worked together in class. Hannah, a bit shyly, asked if he was heading to the dining hall for dinner, noting she hadn't seen him there recently. Neville explained his absence. mentioning Professor Sprout had tasked him with tending to the troublesome biting kale in the greenhouse, which required frequent observation. Hannah's eyes sparkled with an idea, and she quickly presented a lunchbox she had brought, suggesting they eat together while tending to the plants. Neville, puzzled by the coincidence, agreed, unaware of Hannah's intentions. Behind them, Ernie and Justin, having followed their friend, exchanged knowing looks, opting to eavesdrop over joining the others for lunch. They watched as Hannah and Neville shared a meal outside the greenhouse, the sounds of the biting kale fading into the background. Hannah had prepared a large sandwich, anticipating Neville's appetite. "I figured you'd be hungry," she said, a hint of nervousness in her voice. Neville, touched by the gesture, thanked her, and they enjoyed the meal together, with Hannah watching him eat with a smile. Justin, still spying, turned to Ernie, his voice filled with realization. "Is she in love?" Ernie, thrilled by the gossip, nodded. "Clearly, yes." The two Hufflepuffs, hidden in the grass, silently cheered for their friend's budding romance. However, their peaceful moment was soon disrupted by an unwelcome voice. "Neville, I thought you looked so pitiful eating alone. I decided to join you," Draco Malfoy announced, his tone dripping with condescension as he approached, holding his own meal. Malfoy, oblivious to the intimate moment he had interrupted, continued to taunt Neville, hinting at their ongoing rivalry and the physical confrontations it entailed. Before he could reach them, however, he was stopped in his tracks, his attention finally drawn to the two Hufflepuffs standing in his way. "Macmillan, why are you blocking my path?" Draco Malfoy asked with a sneer, his arrogance palpable in the air. Ernie Macmillan exchanged a determined glance with Justin Finch Fletchley. With a voice that betrayed no fear, he declared, "I challenge you, Malfoy, in true Slytherin fashion." The word challenge seemed to ignite a fire in Malfoy, who, in his excitement, carelessly discarded the food he had been holding. "Seeking your own demise? I'll gladly assist." With that, Malfoy approached, ready for the confrontation, and then left as quickly as he had arrived. Meanwhile, Neville Longbottom paused mid-bite, a puzzled expression crossing his face. "Did I just hear Draco's voice?" Hannah Abbott, sitting across from him, shook her head. "I didn't hear anything." "Must have been my imagination," Neville mused before taking another bite of his sandwich. "This is delicious, Hannah. You're going to make someone a wonderful wife someday." At his words, Hannah's cheeks flushed with color. "Then I'll make them for you from now on. I love seeing you enjoy my cooking." Later that day, Hannah noticed the absence of her friends in class and felt a wave of concern wash over her. She learned from a fellow Hufflepuff that Ernie and Justin had been taken to the school hospital. Without hesitation, she rushed there after class, only to find them pleading with Madame Pomfrey for a potion of a different flavor. "What happened to you two?" Hannah demanded, her anger evident. "Why would you duel Draco Malfoy?" The news of their challenge had spread quickly. It was rare for anyone to dare confront Malfoy, especially after the Battle of Hogwarts had laid bare the stark differences in their magical abilities. Yet, motivated by a desire to protect his friend's chance at love, Ernie had fearlessly issued the challenge. And when he fell, Justin had bravely picked up the mantle, only to be bested by Malfoy as well. Their courage earned them the respect of many, including the Gryffindors. Rumor had it that Ron Weasley had even suggested erecting a monument in their honor, a proposal Hermione quickly dismissed as foolish. Seeing Hannah's anger, Ernie managed a weak grin. "Did you enjoy your date?" "We're talking about something serious here," Hannah began, only to be cut off by Justin's dejected voice. "We knew we stood no chance against Malfoy, but we couldn't let him ruin your date," he explained. Tears filled Hannah's eyes as she realized the lengths her friends had gone to for her sake. She embraced them tightly, moved by their gesture. "We're friends. It's no big deal." "The important thing is your date went well," Ernie teased, eliciting a blush from Hannah. "Did you confess your feelings?" he prodded. Hannah's response was uncertain. "I suppose?" Justin groaned theatrically. "So, I took a beating for nothing?" Hannah playfully smacked him, causing Justin to feign injury. "Why do you like Neville Longbottom so much?" Ernie inquired, genuinely curious. Hannah twirled a braid around her finger, a dreamy look in her eyes. "Don't you think he looks heroic wielding a sword?" She smiled shyly. "He saved me once." Ernie looked puzzled. "Saved you? I don't remember that. During the Battle of Hogwarts, Hannah had found herself separated from her friends and cornered by a Death Eater on the 4th floor. It was Neville who had emerged, Huzzufch, bravely confronting the Death Eater and ensuring her safety. He appeared out of nowhere, deflecting a lethal curse and defeating the Death Eater, Hannah recalled fondly. He assured me, with me here, everything will be all right. That moment of bravery and assurance had left a lasting impression on Hannah, and she had fallen for the courageous wizard ever since. Understanding her feelings, Ernie could only offer his blessings as a friend. After visiting her friends, Hannah found herself wandering to the kitchen, lost in thought. If only I could return to that magical room from yesterday. It made cooking seem so effortless. She reminisced about the room, which she hadn't realized was part of the kitchen. Recalling her mother's teachings, she pondered the magic that seemed to infuse her culinary efforts, making every dish a testament to her growing affection for Neville. The saying originated from that ancient Oriental country, "If you want to win a man's heart, you must first capture his stomach." Chapter 583, Devilish Training. The Master of Kings Saturdays in Slytherin had become a day of dread, especially since Neville began to relish in the daily delights of delicious food. On one particular Saturday, Malfoy, donning the number 6 jersey, stood with a proud posture inside the Quidditch pitch. The team members were lined up neatly, exuding a strict discipline. Each one of them carried a certain aura, a testament to Slytherin's 12 consecutive victories, a demeanor of invincibility and conquest. "This year marks my final year," Malfoy declared, his gaze sweeping over the team with a menacing intensity. "I refuse to let anyone tarnish my career this year, nor do I wish to see the end of Slytherin's glory. Remember, we are Slytherins. Victory is ours by right, and no one can snatch it away from us," he continued. "Your only job is to train rigorously and demonstrate your prowess on the field. Strength is paramount. That's the Slytherin creed," Malfoy proclaimed. "If anyone believes they're more deserving of their position, I welcome the challenge." Now in his 7th year, this was Malfoy's last chance at Quidditch glory. He bore the weight of 12 consecutive victories on his shoulders, along with the fear that any misstep could plunge him into infamy as the worst Quidditch captain in Hogwarts history, a prospect that haunted every glory-loving Slytherin. "At my command, mount your broomsticks," Malfoy ordered, initiating what would come to be known as their devilish training. The effects of such training were immediately noticeable. Rumor had it that Astoria was so infuriated she refused to speak to Malfoy for 3 days. There were whispers of a plot to bind Malfoy and toss him out while he bathed, though such plans never progressed beyond the conspiratorial stage. Malfoy's regimen was calculated to push each player to their physical limit while still allowing them to attend daily classes. "I've never seen you employ such intelligence," John remarked, half in jest. Observing Goyle and Crabbe sprawled across the table, exhausted, he added, "Continue this, and you might just find yourself ambushed during a shower." "Me? Ambushed?" Malfoy retorted with his usual arrogance. "John, stand up with Daphne and Astoria." They were in the auditorium at the time, and John gave Malfoy a puzzled look before complying, curious about Malfoy's intentions. Daphne, too, stood up, albeit with a blank expression, while Astoria seemed to anticipate Malfoy's next move. Clearing his throat, Malfoy announced in the most haughty tone imaginable, "Everyone here is rubbish." His words were like a cannon, inflicting near-total damage on the Slytherin table's morale. The entire house was incensed. John was at a loss for words. Malfoy's penchant for courting danger was baffling, yet somehow he always managed to dodge the consequences of his provocations. However, Malfoy's risky strategy wasn't without its merits. His words ignited a fierce determination within the Quidditch team, much to the astonishment of their Gryffindor counterparts. Harry witnessed a Slytherin player get struck by lightning for flying too high, only to cling desperately to his broom. Ron, visibly shaken, asked, "Harry, you wouldn't resort to such methods, would you?" Compared to Malfoy, Oliver Wood's approach seemed positively brotherly. Ginny, observing the Slytherin training with keen interest, mused, "This might actually be beneficial." Ron, feeling betrayed, exclaimed, "I thought you were my sister, not someone who'd disown me as a brother." Harry, sensing the team's unity, declared, "If it comes to that, I'll resign as captain right now." The Gryffindor team had never been more united, firmly believing that Harry was the only suitable captain. Ginny merely rolled her eyes at her terrified teammates, convinced that such rigorous training could only strengthen them. As Slytherin's grueling session concluded and Gryffindor took their place, Malfoy wiping the rain off his face. He strode past Harry with an arrogance Harry didn't recognize. "This time, I will personally defeat you." His eyes blazed with the promise of battle, igniting a similar fire in Harry, who retorted, "Gryffindor will redeem itself." The air crackled with tension as their gazes locked. Malfoy, sneering, led his team away, though they still needed to visit the school hospital. Gore, who had been struck by lightning, was still emitting smoke from his head, his hair now resembling a poorly done perm. "I hope that shock jolts some sense into your brain," Malfoy remarked sarcastically. Madame Pomfrey, visibly annoyed while treating him, promptly kicked Malfoy out. Before leaving, Malfoy peeked from the doorway, inquiring, "He'll be healed before the next practice, right?" Madame Pomfrey, trembling with anger, declared, "I need to speak with your head of house." Ultimately, Malfoy's grueling training sessions were halted in October. Displeased, Malfoy complained to John, "She's just a healer. What does she know about Quidditch?" John, flipping through his notes, replied with a sneer, "You're lucky you're not banned from the prefect's bathroom instead." The first Quidditch match of the year was approaching on Saturday. Thankfully, Malfoy's extreme training had been stopped. Otherwise, the team might have been too exhausted to compete. The reigning champions, having secured 12 consecutive victories, were buzzing with excitement. In contrast, the Ravenclaw team, especially Luna, seemed unfazed by the pressure. Luna was busily crafting a new hat for the occasion, depicting an eagle clutching a serpent, ready to strike. While discussing her design, John hesitated, wondering if it was wise to seek advice from a Slytherin. Luna, undeterred, mentioned, "Miss Grey was thrilled with the idea and asked me to thank you." John shrugged. "Everyone benefits in their own way. I couldn't have done it without her help." Miss Grey, usually reserved, had become more open, even engaging with her housemates more freely. Meanwhile, the horned snoring beast, a creature of their own making, ambled over, its horns piercing the fruit on the table. It had grown to the height of the table and snorted like a cow. "Mr. Corner is hungry," Luna observed, offering it various fruits. John noted the creature's potential. "It's still growing. It's fascinating to imagine what it might become." Basil, a small bird, landed on the creature's head, delivering a letter to John from Hagrid about the unicorns shedding their horns, a rare event that delighted Hagrid. John realized this was an opportunity to acquire new unicorn horns, essential for his work. "It seems Wei is offering to trade some stars for them," he mused, recalling how unicorns were fond of stars. "I wonder if the Star Club still has some in stock," he pondered, considering his next move in the magical exchange of goods. John had never ventured into Hogwarts before, but he was determined not to let this opportunity slip by. After bidding farewell to Luna, he made his way down a corridor. At its end, a door materialized out of thin air. John, recalling his previous encounters, pushed the door open and found himself inside the Star Club. The scene before him was unexpectedly charming. A group of golden creatures were busily tidying up the place, their movements reminiscent of a troop of diligent elves. Upon noticing John's arrival, they quickly gathered and offered him a collective salute, a gesture of respect and recognition. John acknowledged their greeting with a nod before inquiring, "How many more stars do we need?" One of the golden creatures, eager to respond, produced 2 bottles labeled Quenching from the club's reserves. "2 bottles should suffice," it said, its voice tinged with a sense of pride for being able to fulfill the request. With a snap of his fingers, John effortlessly collected the stars, a testament to his mastery and control over the magical elements surrounding him. The simplicity of the action belied the depth of his connection to the magical world, a connection that was both mysterious and profound. Chapter 584, The Unicorn Horn Shedding Season and a New Treatment Idea. Under the starlit sky, John prepared to depart. His steps halted abruptly as he cast a thoughtful glance back at the diminutive golden figures seated around the table, their day's work completed. With a final contemplative look, he turned and exited the Quenching Club. As the door shut behind him, the entrance to the Star Club gradually vanished from sight. On his way to Hagrid's cabin, John encountered Professor Flitwick. The professor exclaimed, "My goodness, John, when did you last attend my class? You've not shown up even once." "I will, Professor," John assured him. "Don't make empty promises," Professor Flitwick replied with a hint of concern. "Please, find some time." Reflecting on this, John realized he had indeed neglected his other courses for quite some time. With a class scheduled for the next day, he said, "Tomorrow, Professor, I'll be there without fail." "You're a man of your word, don't forget," Professor Flitwick said, still somewhat worried. John smiled, watching the professor depart. He found the diminutive old man quite endearing. Approaching Hagrid's hut, John noticed Hagrid fumbling with an antiquated camera. "What's the occasion with the camera, Hagrid?" he inquired. Hagrid, with his large fingers clumsily handling the device, managed to trigger a flash, emitting a burst of light and a puff of white smoke. "I'm planning to capture the unicorn horn shedding. It's an incredibly rare event," Hagrid explained with excitement. "We might be the first in 300 years to witness it." The prospect thrilled Hagrid, for nothing excited a magizoologist more than documenting the wonders of fantastic beasts. John observed the camera, which was on the verge of breaking under Hagrid's grip, and remarked, "Hagrid, your camera won't survive at this rate." "Oh, bother," Hagrid fretted, as the camera finally succumbed to his handling and shattered. The pieces scattered on the ground, leaving Hagrid close to tears. "That's it, I can't replace this camera," he lamented. "It's all right, Hagrid, we're wizards," John reassured him. With a flick of his wrist, a golden halo encircled his hand. A golden magic circle enveloped the broken camera, and with a twist of the halo, the pieces reassembled themselves, restoring the camera to its original state. "John, I dare say even Dumbledore couldn't match that," Hagrid exclaimed, eyeing the mended camera warily. John simply chuckled, allowing the camera to float into his hands. "I'm honored by the comparison," he said. Together, they continued towards the unicorn colony. Along the way, Hagrid shared tales of his adventures, including a humorous incident involving Basil and his now-missing beard, which wouldn't fully regrow until the following year. They encountered a Zouwu, a large magical cat, playfully chasing a furball. The creature, lively and affectionate towards John, playfully interacted with them before being gently encouraged to return to its play with Glop. Glop, a giant who had played a role in the Battle of Hogwarts, had been granted a habitat in the Forbidden Forest, a decision influenced by John's suggestion to Slughorn. This area was now his domain, marking him as the only giant left in Britain after the others were banished. The Ministry of Magic had taken possession of a golden crown, a relic from the giants, now dubbed the Evidence of the King and displayed for public viewing. This symbolized the transfer of power from the giants to the wizarding community. Upon reaching the unicorn colony, John and Hagrid witnessed a sacred ceremony overseen by Clark. A unicorn, stepping into a large tree hollow, began to shed its horn, which fell off as if it were made of jelly. The horn, once shed, quickly hardened upon touching the ground. This remarkable event sparked an idea in John's mind, potentially leading to a new treatment or magical application. The unicorn horn shedding season, a rare and mystical occurrence, offered untold possibilities for the wizarding world. On the hill of the unicorn horn, a magical event unfolded under the watchful eyes of Hagrid and John. A single ray of sunlight pierced through the canopy of a tall, majestic tree, illuminating a unicorn's horn. This light initiated a miraculous transformation. Small horns began sprouting from the original, growing steadily until a brand new unicorn horn was formed. Hagrid, utterly mesmerized by the spectacle, whispered in awe, "It's amazing." Realizing a moment too late, he lamented, "I forgot to take a picture," and hastily grabbed the camera from John, his hands slick with sweat from his anxiety. As a second unicorn underwent the same enchanting process, John's curiosity about the tree grew. He learned from Waiwei that this tree was revered as the sacred tree of unicorns, a vital presence that made the existence of unicorn herds possible. To the unicorns, this tree was akin to a mother or deity. Clark, noticing John and Hagrid's presence, greeted them with a nod. He then turned to Hagrid with a serious tone. "Hagrid, I hope you won't share those photos." Confused, Hagrid asked, "Ah, why?" Clark, with a wisdom reflecting his deep connection to the unicorns, explained, If word of our secret spreads, greedy individuals will stop at nothing to uncover the unicorn herd and the sacred tree's mysteries. He trusted John and Hagrid, knowing their intentions were pure, and made it clear that the unicorns would continue to regard them as friends as long as the photos remained private. John agreed to keep the secret, suggesting to Hagrid, "It's good to keep some memories just for ourselves." Reluctantly, Hagrid set the camera aside, his commitment to protecting magical creatures outweighing his desire for exploration. At John's gesture, the camera disintegrated into a pile of parts under a flash of white light, earning Clark's gratitude. "Thank you for your understanding. You will always be friends of the unicorns," Clark said, his expression softening. The horn-changing ceremony continued, and Wei proudly showed off her new horn to John, explaining that the spiral pattern indicated she was a year older. To celebrate, John opened 2 bottles of stars, a drink that seemed to excite the entire unicorn herd, even Clark. Hagrid, puzzled by this addition to the unicorn's diet, watched as Wei guarded the precious liquid from him. After leaving with several newly formed unicorn horns, John returned to Hogwarts to begin his work. He meticulously ground the horns into powder for his potions, careful to maintain a low temperature to prevent damaging the crucible. Holding a vial of phantom tears, John contemplated his next steps. He summoned the Book of Darkness and delved into the complexities of the blood curse, a malady known for bringing misfortune and death. With the book floating before him, John reviewed the chapters on souls and curses, seeking the knowledge needed to combat the blood curse. Surrounded by experimental reports and magical texts, he declared, "It's time to start the treatment for the blood curse." With the support of 3 powerful wizards and the expertise of Potion Master Slughorn, John was ready to take action against the formidable curse. John pondered his need for an ally in his treatment endeavors. The Greengrass sisters, Daphne and Astoria, came to mind. After careful consideration of their conditions, he concluded that Astoria was at a higher risk of succumbing to the blood curse in the future. Given that his plan was still in its experimental phase, John aimed to minimize any potential risks. Thus, he decided to reach out to Daphne. He sat down at his desk, quill in hand, and began to compose a letter to Daphne Greengrass. The words flowed onto the parchment, each sentence carefully crafted to convey his request without revealing too much. John knew the importance of discretion, especially when dealing with matters as sensitive as a blood curse. As he sealed the letter with a drop of wax, John couldn't help but feel a mix of anticipation and anxiety. Inviting Daphne into this intricate part of his life was not a decision he made lightly. However, he believed in the necessity of his actions. The potential benefits of having Daphne's support in his treatment plan outweighed the risks. With the letter ready, John summoned his owl, entrusting it with the delivery to Daphne Greengrass. As the owl took flight, disappearing into the night sky, John hoped that Daphne would understand his request and agree to support him. The success of his plan might very well depend on it. Chapter 585, The Curse's Terrifying Toll. A piercing scream echoed through the room, causing Malfoy to tremble. He leapt up from where he had been lounging on the sofa, wand in hand, ready for action. Ever since Daphne had bested him with her formidable combo, leaving him unable to fend for himself, he had made it a rule never to go anywhere, even the bathroom, without his wand. However, in this moment, Malfoy was puzzled about the source of the scream. Daphne was holding an envelope, her gaze locked onto the words written on it. "Come to the Star Club, come alone." Her heart raced, pounding as if it were trying to escape her chest. Pansy, meanwhile, was cowering in a corner, her eyes wide with fear. From Daphne's expression, she could sense a level of obsession that surpassed even her own. The room's tension was palpable, causing Basil the Owl to avert its gaze, while Pansy's owl panicked, pleading for escape. Pansy's owl cried out, "Let me out, I don't want to stay here." In a flash, Daphne grabbed Pansy and dragged him to the closet. She flung open the doors, tossing aside a school uniform robe to reveal a collection of dresses and various outfits. "Help me decide what to wear," she demanded. Pansy, still reeling from Daphne's unexpected strength, pointed at a garment in a daze. By the time he collected his thoughts, Daphne had already slipped into the elegant black dress she had worn to a previous banquet. As Daphne prepared to leave, Pansy caught sight of the note slipping from her grasp and quickly lunged to clutch at her leg. "Think twice, Daphne," he implored. Daphne, momentarily confused, asked, "What?" Pansy struggled to his feet, wiping away tears, and said with a heavy heart, "Use your head, that's John. What could he possibly want with you?" John Wick was the dream of many Hogwarts girls, but he was also known for his lack of initiative. The idea of John asking Daphne out seemed ludicrous to Pansy. "Impossible, absolutely impossible," he scoffed. Daphne's frenzied state began to subside after Pansy's intervention. She realized the truth of the situation. Yes, it was John, and the realization broke her heart. As she left the dormitory, she changed back into her school uniform, her heart heavy, yet still clinging to a thread of hope. She rushed past the common room, oblivious to Malfoy's guarded stance. Malfoy, for his part, was confused, mistakenly believing that his secret rendezvous with Astoria after class had been discovered. He was unaware of the roller coaster of emotions Daphne had just experienced, from anticipation and joy to disappointment and loss. "I thought Daphne would teach Draco a lesson," Brace muttered to himself, feeling let down. Having been humiliated by Malfoy himself, Brace had been looking for a way to get even. The last time they had clashed, the more he thought about it, the angrier he became. He wasn't alone in his sentiments. Many in Slytherin had hoped to see Malfoy put in his place, some even wagering snacks on the outcome. But their hopes were dashed. Goyle, frustrated, crushed a chocolate frog in his hand and exclaimed, "Why didn't they fight? Do you wish they had fought?" A voice interjected. Without thinking, Goyle responded, "It'd be good for Draco to spend a couple of days in the hospital wing." Suddenly realizing the voice wasn't Crabbe's, Goyle turned to see Malfoy, who had approached unnoticed. Malfoy, feigning camaraderie, clapped Goyle on the shoulder before delivering a swift punch to his stomach. "Take a deep breath. A little pain is normal," Malfoy said, as Goyle's cries filled the room. To Malfoy, betrayal by a follower was unforgivable. The tension in the air was palpable, a stark reminder of the complex web of alliances and enmities within Slytherin House. Daphne Greengrass made her way to the first floor, then ascended to the fourth, her steps slowing as she approached the former location of the Quunxing Club. Pausing in front of the door, she took a deep breath to steady herself. "It's fine, Daphne. It's just an ordinary meeting," she whispered, attempting to soothe the unease in her heart. For Daphne, being near John was enough. She believed that, in time, she would have her chance. With a newfound calm, Daphne opened the door to the Club of Stars, only to be greeted by a room filled with thick smoke. Beyond this initial chamber was another room, leading her into the Dragon Valley. Here, giant dragons soared, and John was surrounded by floating parchments. On either side of him, 2 books, one black and silver, the other white, lay open. A black dragon descended, delivering messages to John. "Thanks, Amohan. That's enough," John said, affectionately patting the dragon on its massive head before sending it back to its cave. Amohan flicked its tail joyfully, nodded, and took flight. "John?" Daphne called out as she entered the Dragon Valley, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "What's happening?" "I realized we were missing some materials, so I had Amohan assist me in gathering them." John explained with a chuckle, stirring a cauldron with his wand. "Looks like you won't be able to attend class this afternoon. You'll be staying here with me." Daphne's heart fluttered at his words, though she tried to mask her reaction with a hum. She approached to examine the experimental reports floating in the air, noting their age. "The curse affecting you is different from Astoria's," John said, waving a hand to bring a report closer. The Ravenclaw books flipped pages rapidly. "You're in the latent period. We need to activate it before I can attempt to cure it." As the Ravenclaw book floated before Daphne, she read about the potential outcomes, death or cure. Despite the gravity of the situation, she said without hesitation, "I believe in you, John." "Sometimes we must confront reality, Daphne," John replied, shaking his head. "The challenge of curing a blood curse is well known. You shouldn't trust me blindly. You need to make your own judgment." "I believe in you. That is my judgment," Daphne stated firmly, locking eyes with John. "Trust me, my king." She hesitated, unable to express her deeper feelings, fearful that doing so might alter their relationship or cause John discomfort. If death was her fate, she preferred to face it as John's friend, not as a source of lifelong regret for him. Daphne's pride wrestled with her feelings, unsure if her love was too humble, yet she chose to trust John unconditionally, ready to face the potentially fatal curse. Daphne. John looked at her determined expression and nodded slowly. I swear on my life that you will be safe. He then consulted the Dark God book for a method to activate the curse. Presenting the book to Daphne, John poured a brewed potion from the cauldron. Drink this, and then touch the book, he instructed. Taking a deep breath to calm her nerves, Daphne drank the potion, that feeling no immediate effect. She then reached out to touch the Dark God book, willing to trust John despite sensing the book's malevolence. She believed in John's promise, confident that not even death could deter him. As her palm made contact with the book, Daphne felt no discomfort. She looked up at John, about to speak, but suddenly darkness enveloped her vision. Her body spun and then fell onto a soft bed of vegetation. John quickly stepped forward, his wand at the ready, as he used magic to assess Daphne's condition. The curse's power surged within Daphne's body, expanding rapidly like a mushroom after a rainstorm, swiftly engulfing her entire being. Daphne was thrust into a state that bordered on death, her condition deteriorating rapidly. The curse's potency is beyond anything I could have imagined, John thought, his heart clenching with fear. Without wasting a moment, he sprang into action, initiating a series of treatments to counteract the curse's effects. John's hands moved with precision and urgency, weaving complex spells and incantations designed to purge the dark magic that had taken hold. The room was filled with a tense atmosphere, the air crackling with the energy of the counter-curses he employed. Despite the grim situation, John's determination did not waver. He understood the stakes were high, and failure was not an option. As he worked, John couldn't help but marvel at the curse's complexity and strength. It was as if it had a life of its own, fighting back against his efforts with a malevolent will. But John was no ordinary wizard. His knowledge of dark curses and their antidotes was extensive, honed through years of study and practice. The battle between John's healing magic and the curse raged on, a silent struggle that demanded every ounce of his skill and concentration. With each passing moment, the curse's grip seemed to loosen, its power waning under the relentless assault of John's magic. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the dark aura that had enveloped Daphne began to dissipate, retreating into the shadows from whence it came. John's spells had worked. The curse was lifted, leaving Daphne's body free from its malignant influence. Exhausted but relieved, John watched as color slowly returned to Daphne's cheeks, a sure sign of her recovery. She stirred, her eyes fluttering open, confusion and gratitude mingling in her gaze as she took in her surroundings. "You're safe now, Daphne," John said, offering her a reassuring smile. "The curse has been removed." Daphne's response was weak but filled with warmth. "Thank you, John. I owe you my life." As Daphne's strength gradually returned, John couldn't help but reflect on the ordeal. The curse had been a formidable foe, but in the end, knowledge and perseverance had prevailed. It was a stark reminder of the dangers that lurked in the wizarding world, and the importance of being prepared to face them head-on. Chapter 586, The Curse of Blood Origin. The blood curse erupted in full force. As Daphne fell into a sudden coma, guided by the ominous predictions of the Dark God book, John sprang into action, his expression etched with solemnity. Drawing his wand, he unleashed the souls harvested from the Dementor farm, transforming them into a swarm of nano-level rays that filled the air. These rays, the finest weapons known, possessed the ability to slice through even the essence of a soul. With his wand in his left hand and his right arm encased in silver, John skillfully manipulated the myriad rays of light, directing them into Daphne's body. The potion he had ingested began to counteract the curse's explosive power, halting its progression. Gently, his wand traced over Daphne, summoning Ouroboros halos around her limbs. His eyes morphed into dragon-like pupils as he stood surrounded by the silent vigil of a dragon. Focused intently, John uttered, "Return of the soul," as beams of light, fine as threads, penetrated Daphne's body. Through his dragon eyes, he could see her soul, now ensnared by the spreading curse. "Life is swiftly claimed in the moments following the outbreak," he noted, as he used the rays of light to sever the curse's growth, which resembled fungal spots. Daphne's body reacted, black spots emerging and then being enveloped by a divine aura reminiscent of a unicorn's power. John realized the urgency of the situation. If he didn't act quickly, Daphne's soul might withstand the corruption, but her body would inevitably succumb. Summoning more soul scalpels, John increased his efforts to excise the curse, which continued to proliferate at an alarming rate. Recognizing the need for speed, he released 10 souls at once, each transforming into hundreds of tiny rays that burrowed into Daphne's body, significantly accelerating the removal process. John then turned his attention to a potion brewing in another cauldron, which cooled rapidly at his command. A fist-sized potion orb flew directly into Daphne's ear, followed by the preparation of a third, much larger crucible, akin to a bathtub, filled with a repair fluid concocted from ingredients sourced from Dragon Valley. Daphne's body, suspended in the fluid, showed signs of healing, the fluid miraculously not hindering her breathing. As her skin began to tear and heal, starting from her fingers and gradually covering her entire body, John watched intently. The repair fluid worked wonders, mending the skin as quickly as it was damaged. The Ouroboros halos served as a last line of defense, ensuring that as the curse was eradicated, the bodily harm was swiftly repaired. Confident in the potions he had developed with Slughorn's assistance, John felt a surge of gratitude towards his mentor. Their research had focused on creating concoctions that could shield the body and soul from the curse's ravages, ensuring the survival of those afflicted. As the soul surgery progressed methodically, the curse began to recede, outpaced by the speed of the scalpels. The emerald green hue of the repair fluid lightened, its medicinal properties rapidly absorbed by Daphne's body, which now appeared fairer and smoother. However, just as victory seemed within grasp, the curse within Daphne's heart surged unexpectedly, growing at a rate that outstripped its eradication. Engulfed by the mutation, Daphne coughed silently within the repair fluid, blood seeping from her lips, a vivid scarlet against the pale of her skin. Cursed mutation? John's face paled, a mix of shock and determination setting in as he prepared to confront this unforeseen challenge. John carefully discarded his small bag, and the bottles containing the souls shattered one after another. Under his meticulous control, the souls transformed into minuscule soul scalpels, enveloping Daphne's body in a protective layer. "Her body is at its limit," John murmured, a bead of sweat trailing down his forehead. His expression was grave as he administered the jade potion, using it as a restorative fluid. Concurrently, the soul pot, ion flowed gently into Daphne's mouth. Upon the cursed soul, a diminutive guardian soul materialized, acting as a protector for a crucial part of Daphne's essence. It valiantly fought off the encroaching curse, effectively suppressing the malevolent force. Seizing the moment of advantage, John felt the strain of manipulating thousands of soul scalpels with his right hand, each movement eradicating swathes of the curse. "Soul Eater Curse," he whispered, his eyes ablaze with a dark aura as he condensed the curse into a concentrated mass. Without a moment's hesitation, he unleashed the soul-devouring curse, directing the scalpels to penetrate the curse's core. He meticulously extracted the curse from Daphne's body. Simultaneously, the emerald green restorative solution transformed into crystal-clear water. The water sphere burst, and Daphne was gently released. John caught her with a spell, setting her down with utmost care. He then proceeded to meticulously scan her body with his magical power, ensuring her well-being. After confirming her safety, John, exhausted, sat beside Daphne. Wiping away his sweat, he shared his concerns. "I hadn't anticipated a secondary outbreak of the curse. It seems we initially survived by sheer luck, but the threat persisted." The insidious nature of the curse was beyond John's expectations. He lay down warily beside Daphne, murmuring to Amohan, "Wake me later." With that, he closed his eyes and succumbed to sleep. As the sun set, Daphne awoke, feeling an unprecedented lightness, as if a decade-long burden had been lifted from her shoulders. "John! John!" she called out, initially disoriented but quickly sobering up at the sight of a familiar face. Sitting up too swiftly, she felt a wave of dizziness. Glancing around guiltily and noting their solitude, save for a few dragons, she lay back down, facing John. The proximity wasn't her doing, she assured herself. Curiously, she reached out to poke John's cheek, receiving no response. After a second attempt still yielded no reaction, she withdrew her hand, smiling at the peaceful figure beside her. She took another cautious glance around before inching closer to John. As the last sliver of sunlight vanished, John's eyes snapped open in the ensuing darkness, catching Daphne off guard with their sudden luminescence. "Are you awake?" he asked, his voice devoid of any trace of sleepiness. Rising to stretch, he massaged his neck. "We need to revise the treatment plan. Your curse harbors the potential for a second outbreak. With the cure, your descendants will be free from its threat," John explained with calm precision. "This curse seems designed to incubate within the host, only to manifest at a certain age, leading to inevitable decline. However, this decline doesn't prevent the curse from being passed to offspring. Its insidious nature is akin to a venomous snake," he continued. "The outbreak coincides with soul erosion, causing physical harm during treatment." Noticing Daphne's silence, John turned to find her hastily retreating, seemingly flustered. Puzzled by her reaction, he surmised his explanation might have been too complex. Simplifying, he assured her, "In essence, I've discovered a method to eradicate the Greengrass family curse, though it requires further preparation." "Are you feeling all right, Daphne?" John asked with concern, noticing Daphne's prolonged silence. Observing her flushed cheeks, his brow furrowed in worry. "Hasn't it healed yet?" "No, it's not that. I'm just a bit exhausted," Daphne managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper as John leaned in closer. "Of course, it makes sense. Your body's strength tends to diminish after undergoing continuous magical treatments," John said, understandingly. With a flick of his wand, the small bag that had been resting by his side soared through the air, and the bottles and jars within it neatly arranged themselves, heading towards the door as if on cue. "Let's head back then. After Christmas, I'll arrange for Astoria's treatment," John proposed, his tone reassuring. "Having been through this once, we'll be better prepared for what comes next. Don't worry, I made you a promise," he added, offering Daphne a comforting smile, to which she responded with a grateful nod. Meanwhile, on a distant mountain, Amohan conversed with the fireball dragon beside him, a creature of immense power and beauty. Did she just press her lips against the face of the shadowy figure? "Is she planning to devour him?" Amohan inquired, his tone laced with curiosity and a hint of amusement. The fireball dragon, which had been raised from a young age, replied with uncertainty, "I believe that might be a form of wizarding etiquette, though I'm not entirely sure." It recalled witnessing several dragon trainers engaging in similar actions, noting that it wasn't uncommon for males to do the same. "It must be some sort of customary greeting or sign of respect among them," the dragon pondered, trying to make sense of the human behaviors it had observed over the years. Chapter 587, Magic Mastery, Neville's Spring Spell Class. Professor Flitwick was overjoyed to have John in his class. Despite John not being a Ravenclaw student, he had quickly become one of Flitwick's most esteemed pupils. "Wands should not be wielded with such force, Mr. Crabbe." Professor Flitwick, though small in stature, commanded respect in his classroom. The curriculum for the 7th grade charm class had shifted from theoretical knowledge to practical spell control, preparing students for their NEDUT exams. "Excellent levitation charm, Miss Granger," he praised, his admiration evident for well-cast spells. Ron and Harry exchanged puzzled glances. "Why is John here? I didn't think he'd be attending charms this year," Ron whispered. "Professor Flitwick invited him," Harry replied, equally baffled. "I was surprised he accepted." Ron couldn't hide his incredulity. What's there left for him to learn? He's already defeated Voldemort. Indeed, John's presence was surreal, not just for Ron, but for everyone. Even the Ravenclaw students were at a loss about their head's intentions. As the class neared its end, Professor Flitwick, seizing the moment, gestured for everyone's attention. "Yes, Miss Parkinson, please release Mr. Knott for now," he said, prompting Pansy to reluctantly let go of Theodore's arm. "I understand your curiosity regarding my invitation to Mr. Wick," Professor Flitwick began, addressing the room. "Mr. Wick's expertise in magic far exceeds what I can teach. However, I invited him with the hope that he would share some of his groundbreaking magical creations and applications with us." This was a clever strategy, characteristic of a Ravenclaw to enrich the class's learning experience. Professor Flitwick beckoned John with enthusiasm. "John, it's your turn," he said, smiling. John stood up, albeit reluctantly, and approached the front of the class. The students watched in awe, realizing they were about to witness a lesson from a wizard of unparalleled skill. John pondered over which spell to demonstrate. His magic was potent and, if mishandled, could be as dangerous to the caster as to the target. After careful consideration, he chose to teach the Shattering Curse, a spell he had mastered and modified. "I categorize magic into 7 levels," John explained, capturing the students' attention. With a flick of his wand, he directed a white light towards a humanoid target in the classroom. The target emitted white smoke before its midsection crumbled under the spell's force. John executed 4 more attacks, each causing varying degrees of damage and demonstrating the spell's destructive potential. The first 5 levels involve a gradual improvement in the application of magical power and combat skills, John elucidated. The students were visibly impressed by the demonstration. Crab, ever the brute, raised his hand. "What about the 6th level?" he asked. "The 6th level allows for the creation of new variations on the spell itself. It's about altering the spell's form," John explained. With a gentle tap of his wand on the table, a wave of white light spread out, disintegrating a reformed humanoid target into dust as if it had been subjected to centuries of weathering. Professor Flitwick was ecstatic. "An exemplary shattering curse," he exclaimed. John, caught up in the moment, prepared another spell. He conjured a lightning-shaped whip that wrapped around a table, shattering the contact point upon a forceful pull. Then a white orb of light began to form at the tip of his wand, growing larger by the second. Professor Flitwick, sensing the potential for destruction, intervened. "John, please, not in the classroom." "Sorry, Professor Flitwick," John apologized, lowering his wand. "I got carried away." He had momentarily forgotten the confines of their learning environment, a classroom not designed to withstand the full extent of his magical prowess. He dispelled the crushing spell and stated matter-of-factly, "What you've just witnessed are 3 variations of the crushing spell. Despite the different manifestations, their purpose remains singular, to shatter." The modified shattering spell was not only visually striking, but also demonstrated formidable power. At this juncture, another hand was raised, belonging to Ernie, who inquired with palpable excitement. "What about the 7th level?" "That represents a new realm of magic," John replied with a slight smile, surveying the room before spreading his hands and adding, "Unfortunately, I cannot demonstrate it here." This implied that John had achieved mastery at the 7th level, a revelation that left the students exchanging hopeful glances with Professor Flitwick. Hermione found herself at a loss on how to approach John now. The idea of catching up to him seemed more distant than ever, especially when she was still taking notes, and he was already instructing from the podium. Professor Flitwick, equally eager to witness the 7th level magic, decided to leverage his authority and led the students outside the classroom, much to their delight. As the group made their way outside, Neville and Hannah were seen walking closely together, hinting at a budding relationship. Malfoy, on the other hand, could barely contain his envy, muttering, "If only my Atua were here, they wouldn't stand a chance." Daphne, overhearing this, couldn't help but roll her eyes and retort sarcastically, "As if you'd have a chance to shine." Malfoy's frustration only grew, especially with his rival present. Pansy, curious about Daphne's recent activities, approached her and whispered, "What did you and John do yesterday?" Daphne, her cheeks flushing at the memory, stammered, "Nothing happened." "Really?" Pansy eyed her skeptically, recalling how Daphne had tossed and turned restlessly in bed the night before, which hardly seemed like nothing. "We just slept for a while," Daphne clarified in a barely audible voice. "Slept?" Pansy's disbelief was evident. To her, Daphne's hurried explanations only fueled further speculation. Finally, the group arrived at a clearing outside the castle, near the remnants of a past battle at Hogwarts. "This is the spot," John announced, signaling for everyone to halt. "I will demonstrate this only once, as we have but a single target." The anticipation was palpable as John raised his wand towards the ruins. With a command of Reducto, a spiral of lightning surged from his wand, transforming into a blinding white light. In an instant, the targeted ruins were obliterated, leaving behind a gaping crater where they once stood. The sheer power of the spell left everyone in awe. Is this the crushing curse? Ron voiced the collective astonishment. The spell seemed more akin to an annihilation curse, capable of erasing everything in its path. Even Professor Flitwick was left pondering John's current level of power, comparing him to legends like Dumbledore. John, dispelling the smoke from his wand, explained, "As you can see, 7th level magic is immensely powerful, but also places a significant strain on both the wizard and the wand." He emphasized that while others might use the shattering curse as a mere variation of the explosion curse, in his hands, it became akin to a weapon of mass destruction. This demonstration starkly highlighted the vast chasm between their abilities and John's mastery. In the days following the introduction of the concept of magic levels at Hogwarts, the school was abuzz with rumors and discussions about the 7 tiers of magical ability. This new system of classification quickly became a focal point of interest among the students, especially after an incident where 2 students attempted to assess each other's skills during a duel. "Oh no, my disarming charm is only level 3, while my opponent's must be at least level 4, one student lamented after a failed attempt to disarm their rival. More often than not, these confrontations were not about who was the stronger wizard, but rather who had mastered spells of a higher level. This shift in perspective made the topic of spell grading a matter of great intrigue, with John's criteria serving as the benchmark for evaluation. However, since John had only demonstrated the crushing spell in detail, the criteria for grading other spells from levels 1 to 7 remained somewhat ambiguous. This ambiguity led to a flurry of speculation and curiosity among the students. One day, Ron, ever curious, turned to Harry and asked, "Harry, do you think you have a level 7 disarming charm?" "Maybe," Harry replied, his tone laced with uncertainty. He hadn't given much thought to the level of his spells, but Ron's question piqued his interest. Hermione, who was listening to their conversation, found herself intrigued by the notion as well. She considered the possibility that Harry's disarming charm might be exceptionally advanced, given his natural talent and the unique experiences he had faced. The idea that spells could be categorized into levels added a new dimension to their understanding of magic, and it was clear that this system had the potential to reshape how they approached their studies and duels alike. As the 3 friends pondered over the implications of this grading system, they couldn't help but wonder how it would affect their future at Hogwarts. Would mastering higher-level spells become the new benchmark for success among wizards and witches? Only time would tell, but for now, the concept of magic levels had certainly captured their imagination and sparked a renewed interest in perfecting their magical abilities. Chapter 588, Lightning over Warsaw, Dumbledore's Letter. Warsaw, Poland, once a city of ancient beauty, had been ravaged by the great wars that swept across Europe. Its magnificent classical buildings were reduced to rubble, but from the ashes, Poland rebuilt. Decades of diligent restoration and construction had breathed life back into the old palaces and churches, restoring them to their former glory. In Warsaw's castle square, a heavy haze hung in the air. Dark clouds churned above, unleashing frenzied lightning and thunder that hastened the steps of pedestrians. The weather was on the brink of a torrential downpour, prompting tourists and locals alike to seek shelter. However, amidst the deserted square, a group of figures emerged, seemingly indifferent to the ominous weather. With a flick of a wand, the statue atop the memorial tower in the center of the square animated, its weapon descending gracefully. The group's leader, with a sly smile, led the way towards the monument. They navigated through a hidden entrance, their bodies descending rapidly into the depths below. "Welcome to the Ministry of Magic, sir," greeted a mustachioed employee. "Please present your work ID." "No, you should recognize who I am," the leader replied, his voice a hiss as he gestured towards the employee's face. The employee's eyes glazed over momentarily before recognition dawned, and he replied enthusiastically, "Of course, right this way." He escorted the group to the office of the Polish Minister of Magic, who was currently scrutinizing an order from the International Federation of Wizards. With a flick of his wrist, the minister discarded the letter into the fireplace just as the office door swung open to admit the visitors. Among them was a man, visibly terrified and unable to speak. "Restore his voice," the leader commanded with a sneer. A wave of his wand later, the man's voice returned. "Who are you? What do you intend to do with me?" The man stammered, addressing the Polish Minister of Magic with a mix of fear and confusion. "Shh! I believe we've met before, Secretary Schmidt," the minister responded, revealing the identity of the man as Schmidt, the missing German Minister of Magic. The effects of the potion he had been forced to consume began to wear off, transforming him from a young man back to his middle-aged self. Schmidt's gaze hardened as he confronted the Polish minister. "You're not the Polish Minister of Magic. I know him. He wouldn't dare." "You're correct," the minister replied, his hair color shifting to reveal white strands as his face morphed into a familiar yet sinister smile. Schmidt's eyes widened in shock upon seeing the heterochromatic eyes staring back at him. "It's you, Grindelwald," Schmidt gasped, realization dawning. "When did you replace the Polish Minister of Magic?" Grindelwald, unfazed by the question, began to pace the room. "Your silence on my plans, hoping to see the British Ministry of Magic falter, was a mistake. Arrogance, stupidity, pride, these are the flaws endangering our world, Minister Schmidt." "Listen, Grindelwald, I am loyal to you. You'll need me. My uncle, remember? He was also a follower of yours," Schmidt pleaded, desperation creeping into his voice. "Old Schmidt? Yes, I remember every one of my loyal followers." Grindelwald paused, his tone turning cold. "But you betrayed him for your political ambitions." Grindelwald approached Schmidt, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Your existence has not elevated our cause, Schmidt." "No, please, Grindelwald, I can be useful to you." Schmidt's pleas filled the room, but Grindelwald, unmoved, silenced him with a flick of his wand, erasing his tongue. Grindelwald then plucked a hair from Schmidt's head, placing it into a vial. He turned, leaving Schmidt in despair as he contemplated his next move in the grand chessboard of the wizarding world. The Minister of Magic from Poland slowly reverted to his original appearance and said in a drawn-out tone, "Now, you are Grindelwald." The person beside him restrained Schmidt, while the leader forced a concoction from a bottle into Schmidt's mouth. Schmidt's appearance transformed, and he let out a silent scream. Grindelwald observed quietly and remarked, "Just like you did," answering Schmidt's second question. Basil, the Phoenix, did not engage in combat but instead flew up to John. Landing next to him, Basil glared at Fawkes with hostility. It spread its wings, revealing feathers scorched black by flames, as if making an accusation. "Okay, I get it," John said, resigned. "You've been tormenting other birds all the time, and now you've met your match?" "Cuckoo!" Basil flapped its wings in protest. John looked at Fawkes and inquired, "Did Dumbledore send you?" Fawkes nodded and placed a letter down. John casually opened the letter and said, "Tell him I received it." As Fawkes prepared to depart, Basil launched a surprise attack, knocking Fawkes down. Feathers scattered in the air, and ultimately, Basil triumphantly held a phoenix feather in its beak. John extended his arms, catching Basil as it landed. He then focused on the letter's contents. "Still trying to bring Grindelwald back?" John scoffed. "You're so naive, Dumbledore." During Grindelwald's imprisonment in Nurmengard, he and Dumbledore occasionally exchanged letters. The letters suggested that Grindelwald had let go of his past ambitions, a notion that Dumbledore found hard to believe. "People change," John muttered as he burned the letter. "You shouldn't cling to that unrealistic fantasy." The letter primarily concerned Grindelwald, whose disappearance in Poland was suspected to be linked to the vanishing of the German Minister of Magic. Grindelwald, despite his history of aggression towards ministry officials, had always shown restraint, never killing those who escorted him back to Europe after his capture by the Magical Congress of America. "It's a bit odd," John mused, stroking his chin. Grindelwald's behavior seemed to have changed since his release from Nurmengard. Perhaps he was considering rallying his followers and initiating reforms in Europe once more. However, John reasoned, Grindelwald must realize that the current state of Muggles posed a challenge that wizards could not easily confront. "He's been acting strangely," John concluded, taking the phoenix feather from Basil and twirling it between his fingers. The next day was the Slytherin Quidditch match. Malfoy, showing uncharacteristic generosity, allowed the team to rest. Meanwhile, John was in the headmaster's office, working on improving the repair fluid. "The potion isn't effective enough?" Slughorn asked, his eyes widening in surprise. That could save a dying dragon. When developing the repair fluid, they had used the fire dragon as a reference model. The blood-borne curse is far more dreadful than you imagine, Professor, John explained, stirring the emerald green liquid. It progresses through 2 stages of latency. Without active intervention, a single treatment might lead people to underestimate its severity. Wait, a second stage of latency? Slughorn interjected, suddenly intrigued. Have you attempted treatment? It was risky, but the outcome was positive, John replied, turning to face an excited Slughorn. Merlin's beard, Slughorn exclaimed, needing a moment to compose himself. He had just learned that the blood-borne curse had been cured. He walked over to a table, grabbed a bottle of mead, and took a hearty swig. Reeking of alcohol, he said, "Do you realize what this means, John? It signifies that we've made a breakthrough in the wizarding world's medical challenges. With this achievement as a reference, we can explore deeper issues," John stated. Slughorn, visibly moved, added, "Vampires and werewolves. Scholars believe their conditions stem from an ancient curse transmitted through bites." Taking a deep breath, Slughorn seemed overwhelmed by the possibilities. Slughorn addressed John with a sense of gravitas. "You have the power to change the world, John." John responded with a nonchalance that belied the weight of the state, meant, one step at a time. Right now, my focus is on healing my friend. The magnitude of the moment seemed to overwhelm even Slughorn, who struggled to maintain his composure. Yet, John's indifferent reaction only served to deepen Slughorn's admiration. With a wry smile, he said, "You never cease to amaze me, John." John, ever pragmatic, shifted the conversation towards a more immediate concern. "I'm actually more excited about tomorrow's Quidditch match than these yet-to-be-explored frontiers," he remarked, as he carefully filled a bottle with the healing potion. With a light-hearted smile, he suggested, "You should come watch the game." "I think I will," Slughorn replied, though his words were soon lost to the comfort of the sofa where he sat, quickly succumbing to sleep, a clear sign of his inebriation. The scene painted a vivid picture of the contrasting personalities between John and Slughorn. John, with his grounded approach to life's grand possibilities, and Slughorn, who, despite his experience and wisdom, found himself momentarily disarmed by the simplicity and purity of John's ambitions. Chapter 589, Malfoy's Domination in Quidditch Saturday. The first Quidditch match of the school year was underway, pitting Slytherin against Ravenclaw. The proud Eagles of Ravenclaw, displaying remarkable perseverance, had nearly caught up with Slytherin. If not for Malfoy's timely capture of the snitch, Ravenclaw's strategy might have succeeded. With Cho Chang's graduation, Ravenclaw's team was under new leadership, captained by a girl named Sophia Nelson. Cho and Cedric, having graduated, were rumored to have rekindled their relationship and were said to have spoken ill of Malfoy on more than one occasion. In the Great Hall, John noticed Luna Lovegood, donning an eagle-themed hat, enthusiastically cheering for Ravenclaw, which was buzzing with a dignified atmosphere. In contrast, Slytherin exuded an air of arrogant ease. Malfoy, with a malicious grin, taunted Ravenclaw's new captain, Sophia Nelson, saying, "You'd better eat less before you end up regretting it." Sophia, only a 5th year, was visibly shaken by Malfoy's intimidation. Confused, she hesitated over her breakfast, unsure whether to continue eating. Astoria Greengrass turned away, disapproving of Malfoy's behavior. The Ravenclaw boys glared at him, and Luna angrily called him a bastard, her insult music to Malfoy's ears. As breakfast concluded, Malfoy led his team to the Quidditch pitch. Sophia, though petite and seemingly fragile, was Ravenclaw's determined chaser. Malfoy, in his rush to leave the hall, roughly shoved aside anyone in his path, including Sophia. Ravenclaw's seeker, in anger, muttered threats against Malfoy, echoed by his teammates' shared desire for victory. In the locker room, Malfoy, now in his Slytherin uniform, delivered a blunt pep talk. "Let's head to the pitch, claim our victory, and crush those damn Ravenclaws." His words ignited a fierce determination in his team, who had been eagerly awaiting this moment after 2 months of rigorous training. The Quidditch Stadium was packed with students, their excitement palpable for this beloved sport. The majority, however, were rooting for Slytherin's defeat, especially Malfoy. John, sitting among the spectators, listened to the chants from the other houses, all expressing disdain for Malfoy. Reflecting on Malfoy's actions, John pondered, "Draco, How can I help you? It was Malfoy's arrogance that had earned him the animosity of many. As Malfoy entered the pitch with his broomstick, a chorus of boos filled the air, but he remained unfazed, telling his team, "Those are just the boos of the weak and incompetent." His teammates, however, were less enthusiastic about attracting further hostility. Even Madame Hooch, a Ravenclaw alumna, couldn't hide her displeasure with Malfoy's provocations, though she tried to remain impartial. The match commenced with the captain's handshake. Malfoy, taking a slow flight along the field's edge, was met with the intense glare of Ravenclaw's Seeker. Ravenclaw initially employed tactics developed by Cho Chang the previous year, but Slytherin was prepared. Astoria Greengrass swiftly intercepted the quaffle from Ravenclaw and scored, breaking the deadlock within the first 3 minutes. "Astoria is unstoppable, scoring goal after goal for Slytherin," exclaimed Ernie, the commentator, as Astoria dominated the field, much to the delight of Slytherin supporters. Ravenclaw faced a dire situation as they were on the brink of being overwhelmed by the formidable Slytherin team, led by the cunning strategist, Malfoy. Despite Ravenclaw's valiant efforts, they only managed to score 3 effective goals, with the score quickly escalating to 130 in Slytherin's favor. Malfoy, exuding confidence, leisurely commanded his team to widen the gap further, aiming to demoralize their future opponents in the tournament with a significant victory margin. The Ravenclaw Seeker, fraught with anxiety, frantically searched for the elusive golden snitch, which seemed to dodge his grasp like a playful sprite. As the score gap widened to 250, the match's outcome became increasingly apparent, culminating in a staggering 550-100 defeat for Ravenclaw. Slytherin's triumph was met with roaring cheers, starkly contrasting Ravenclaw's somber silence. This defeat served as a wake-up call for Gryffindor and Hufflepuff, prompting them to intensify their training efforts. Gryffindor, in particular, rallied behind Ginny's strategy, determined not to suffer a similar fate against Slytherin, especially with Malfoy leading the opposing team. Malfoy's boastful celebration in the stands, proclaiming their easy win, further fueled Ravenclaw's frustration. His ability to capture the snitch effortlessly, leaving Ravenclaw's Seeker trailing, solidified his position as the most vexing opponent in the eyes of many. Meanwhile, in Europe, the hunt for Grindelwald intensified, with arrest warrants circulating widely. Poland, where Grindelwald was believed to be hiding, ramped up its search efforts, unaware that the criminal mastermind had infiltrated their ranks, assuming the guise of their Minister of Magic. Grindelwald's recent speech, promising to capture himself to prevent disasters akin to those in New York and Paris, ironically won him admiration among the Polish magical community. The Auror's relentless search efforts eventually led to the discovery of a saint, signaling that Grindelwald's presence in Poland was no longer a secret. The magical community awaited Dumbledore's move, while Grindelwald, attending the International Federation of Wizards meeting as Poland's Minister of Magic, assured everyone of his own imminent capture, a statement that puzzled many due to its apparent contradiction. The political maneuvering surrounding the presidency of the International Federation of Wizards hinted at the complex dynamics at play, with Grindelwald's arrest being a pivotal factor in the election. The situation underscored the intricate web of deception and strategy that defined the magical world's battle against one of its most notorious villains. The focus was squarely on the Polish Minister of Magic. Capturing Grindelwald could significantly boost his approval ratings. Many had hinted, both overtly and covertly, to the Polish minister, urging him to seize this golden opportunity. Even those close to Old Batty had mentioned it, highlighting the strategic advantage he held with 2 of the magical world's most powerful wizards residing in his country. As the meeting concluded, Grindelwald returned to Poland, a wicked smile playing on his lips. "The stage is set," he murmured to himself, anticipation lacing his voice. "Let the spectacle begin." The Polish Minister of Magic, aware of the high stakes, convened a strategic meeting. The room was filled with tension and determination. "This is more than just an opportunity to capture a dark wizard," he began, addressing the room with a commanding presence. "It's a chance to demonstrate our strength and commitment to peace in the magical world. We must act swiftly and decisively." plans were meticulously laid out, with every detail scrutinized for potential pitfalls. The minister emphasized the importance of intelligence and stealth, knowing well that Grindelwald was no ordinary foe. "We have the advantage of home ground and the support of some of the most skilled wizards in our ranks. Let's use these strengths wisely," he stated, rallying his team. Meanwhile, Grindelwald, ever cunning and 2 steps ahead, was weaving his own plots. His return to Poland was not a retreat, but a calculated move in a much larger game. "They think they can use me to bolster their political standing," he mused, his smile turning cold. "But they'll soon realize they're playing into my hands." As the Polish Ministry of Magic mobilized its forces, the magical community watched with bated breath. The outcome of this confrontation could shift the balance of power and influence the future of the magical world. In the shadows, Old Batty, a figure of considerable influence and power, prepared his own chess pieces. With a deep understanding of the stakes, he knew the importance of supporting the minister. "Grindelwald's capture could change everything," he whispered to his closest confidants. "We must be ready for whatever comes next." The stage was set for a confrontation that would be remembered for ages. The Polish Minister of Magic, bolstered by the hopes and expectations of many, stood at the forefront of this battle, determined to bring Grindelwald to justice. The magical world held its breath, waiting to see whether the promise of a new dawn would emerge from the ensuing darkness. Chapter 590, The Replacement of the 28 Clans and the Female Student President. "You're only a sandwich away from being obese, my God, Neville. Did you eat all the manure from the biting kale?" Malfoy exclaimed in shock upon seeing Neville, who had noticeably gained weight instead of losing any. Even John was puzzled by Neville's transformation. "Really?" Neville, rubbing his stomach, looked down in surprise and sheepishly admitted, "Maybe I did overeat." "What could you possibly overeat in the greenhouse? Manure?" Malfoy couldn't hide his astonishment, contemplating whether his chances of winning would increase if he challenged Neville now. However, it became evident that competing across different weight classes was not advisable. Neville, with fists the size of sandbags, overwhelmed Malfoy, delivering punch after punch until Malfoy was left in disarray. "This is unscientific," Malfoy protested, bewildered. "Why are you stronger?" Flexing his arms in a bodybuilder's pose, Neville's elastic clothes tore apart, revealing his rock-hard muscles. "I feel great, as if my strength is continuously increasing," Neville pondered, then added, "Maybe it's because of Hannah's nutritious lunches." "Hannah? Hannah Abbott?" John asked, taken aback and somewhat puzzled. "Are you two an item?" "She's my girlfriend," Neville admitted shyly. It wasn't unusual for 7th graders to have girlfriends, considering many Hogwarts graduates married soon after leaving school. Percy Weasley's parents were a prime example. However, John remained conflicted about the idea of marrying at such a young age, especially when comparing wizarding customs to those in the Muggle world, where people of their age were still in school. In that eastern country, none of these guys could even get a marriage certificate, John thought, reflecting on the cultural differences. At the Star Club, where the members were gathered, the scene shifted from personal revelations to more pressing matters. Malfoy, nursing his injuries with Astoria's help, managed to grin and said, "My dad mentioned that the Sacred 28 Clans are planning a reordering. The reordering means that the pureblood forces are undergoing a reshuffle. The Sacred 28 are the oldest and most powerful pureblood families in Europe, and with several families wiped out recently, new ones will be added to fill the vacancies," Malfoy explained. John knew this reordering was significant. The Sacred 28 families wielded considerable influence in magical society, and being part of this elite group came with many benefits, even during Voldemort's reign. Families like the Malfoys, Greengrasses, Diggories, Weasleys, and Longbottoms held considerable power, with the Malfoys and Greengrasses being particularly influential due to their financial resources and extensive networks. The Sacred 28 Clans are being reenacted, and the International Federation of Wizards will also re-elect the president, Malfoy continued, highlighting the convergence of significant events. John pondered the implications. Over the years, the influence of purebloods has been deliberately diminished. Is this reordering an attempt to shift the balance of power, or is it a counterattack? he wondered. The reordering of the Sacred 28 was a pivotal moment, signaling potential changes in the wizarding world's power dynamics. For many, especially half-bloods and muggleborns, the term pure blood was met with disdain. Yet the prestige and benefits of being recognized as one of the Sacred 28 families were undeniable, underscoring the complex interplay of heritage, power, and politics in the magical society. In the wizarding world, the Weasley family is known for its prolific nature, with almost every member having more than 3 children. This has significantly contributed to their influence, especially in a world where the population is relatively sparse. Mr. Weasley has ascended to a high-ranking position within the Ministry of Magic, and Percy is on a promising path that could potentially lead him to a top position, such as heading the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. The family's growing power is further solidified by their connections with influential wizards, including Dumbledore. In contrast, the Malfoy and Greengrass families face challenges due to their limited offspring. The Malfoys have only one son, Draco, and the Greengrasses lack a male heir, having 2 daughters. Lucius Malfoy, recognizing the importance of alliances, seeks the support of John, a prominent figure in the wizarding world, to bolster his family's status. John, seeing the mutual benefits, agrees to support the Malfoys on the condition that Lucius backs the Delacour family's inclusion in the prestigious list of the Holy 28 pureblood families. This arrangement is easily accepted by Draco, who assures John of his father's cooperation. The Edgar family, with its ancient lineage and considerable wealth, is also mentioned. The current head, Lucifer Edgar, is the principal of Durmstrang and has ambitions that extend beyond his current position. John supports the Edgar family's inclusion in the Holy 28, arguing that their past association with dark magic should be overlooked in light of their recent contributions to the wizarding world. The next day, John visits Hagrid's cabin and encounters Harry, Hermione, and Ron. The meeting is awkward, especially for Harry, who has seen John's prowess in battle. Hermione, recently elected as president of the Female Student Council, exchanges a few words with John, who congratulates her on her victory. The conversation is tinged with sadness and regret, particularly from Hermione, who apologizes to John for reasons not fully disclosed. John, however, reassures her that she has nothing to apologize for. As the group parts ways, the distance between them and John becomes metaphorically and physically apparent. Hermione, once close to John, now feels left behind as he continues to ascend in the wizarding world. The encounter leaves the trio contemplative, recognizing the complexities of their relationships and the paths they are on. If he hadn't known Hermione, she would likely have been the most radiant presence by Wong's side now. Unfortunately, there are no ifs in reality. Upon graduation, all regrets are left within the school's walls. They will drift further and further away until they are out of sight. Hermione, too, will emerge from the shadows of her sorrowful past. Graduation marks not just the end of an academic journey, but a pivotal moment of transition. It's a time when the paths diverge, leading each individual towards their unique destiny. For Hermione, this signifies a departure from the melancholy that once enveloped her, a chance to step into the light and rediscover her brilliance. As they move forward, the memories of what could have been linger, a bittersweet reminder of choices made and opportunities missed. Yet it's these very experiences that shape them, molding their character and guiding their steps into the future. Hermione's resilience shines through as she navigates her way out of the past's grip. Her journey is a testament to the strength within, a beacon of hope for those who find themselves lost in the shadows of regret. With each step, she leaves behind the sadness, moving closer to a future filled with promise and possibility. In the grand tapestry of life, every end is a new beginning. Graduation is not just a farewell to the familiar, but an invitation to the unknown. For Hermione and her peers, it's a threshold to cross, leading them towards new adventures, challenges, and triumphs. As they venture forth, the lessons learned and the friendships forged within the school's confines will remain a lasting legacy of their time spent together. In this moment of transition, Hermione stands at the precipice of change, ready to embrace the journey ahead. With a heart full of hope and eyes set on the horizon, she steps into the future, leaving the past where it belongs, in the memories of a time gone by. Chapter 591, Dumbledore's Concerns. Ere John made his way to Hagrid to request assistance in gathering materials. Despite being renowned as the formidable boss of Johnny Silverhand, when it came to sourcing materials, Hagrid was unparalleled. "Beestum horns? I'm puzzled as to why you'd need the horns of such a vile creature," Hagrid remarked, examining a small card John handed him. With a flick of his wrist, the card unfurled into a list stretching over 2 meters. Among the items were common materials, but also components from magical creatures known for their belligerence, like the Beestum, a creature adorned with scales and antlers, both massive and warlike. "I reckon it's a rarity, likely hidden in the darkest corners," Hagrid mused, never one to deny his friend's assistance. He rolled up the lengthy list, poured a cup of tea from the steaming pot, and offered it to John. The international climate is fraught with tension. What was once easily acquired now necessitates smuggling. Hagrid quickly covered his mouth, realizing he had spoken more than he should. John offered a resigned smile. "There's no need to treat me like a child, Hagrid." "But to me, you're still a youngster," Hagrid responded, shaking his head. "You're still in school. Despite your reputation, it doesn't change your youth." "Thanks, Hagrid. Your thoughtfulness is always appreciated," John said, patting Hagrid's arm before taking a sip of his tea. "That's just been boiled," Hagrid remarked, a puzzled expression on his face. "Have you forgotten? I am akin to a fire dragon," John quipped, exhaling a small fireball to demonstrate. "How did you manage that?" Hagrid's eyes sparkled with curiosity, reminiscent of his fascination with magical creatures. "Each animagus transformation is unique," John explained casually. "For instance, Professor McGonagall's cat form possesses agility and strength far beyond that of a regular cat. She could easily send you flying, Hagrid." Hagrid, who had a knack for transfiguration during his Hogwarts days, remained skeptical. John continued, "Your heritage, Hagrid, is a mix of wizard and giant blood. Animagi infuse their human soul and magical power into their animal forms. They may change shape, but their essence remains that of a wizard. The wizarding body, distinct from that of a muggle, adapts during transformation, aligning with the soul's needs," John added, seeing Hagrid's confusion. "It boils down to this," John said, placing his teacup down. "I seek materials that resonate with the essence of animagi and patronuses. I aim to create a new and formidable guardian." As John stepped outside, his voice lingered. "I await your good news, Hagrid." "Leave it to me," Hagrid declared, despite not fully grasping the concept. He noticed the fireball John had created, still burning brightly, suspended in the air. Experimentally, he clamped the fireball with tongs, which immediately glowed a golden red, a testament to the flame's extraordinary nature. John was undeniably a figure of immense power, capable of actions that could lead to significant consequences. The casual release of an eternal flame, a blend of dark magic from Fiendfire and the mystical fairy fire of Goblet, was a testament to his capabilities. Dumbledore's apprehensions were justified. The more one understood John, the greater the fear of his potential missteps. Black magic was not a trivial matter, and its implications were far-reaching. The distinction between good and evil is stark, and the reason black magic is so named lies in its dreadful capacity to corrupt the soul. John possesses a terrifying ability to bring death upon the world, a fact that deeply concerns Dumbledore. What alarms Dumbledore even more is John's seemingly limitless potential. Each time Dumbledore believes he has grasped the extent of this young wizard's capabilities, he discovers he has merely scratched the surface. "He's more frightening than Riddle and Grindelwald, Severus," Dumbledore confided in Snape, who found himself in agreement. "What we know is merely the tip of the iceberg." "Yes, Severus," Dumbledore, the venerable headmaster of Hogwarts, responded as he transferred his memories into the pensieve for Snape to witness. They watched scenes of the white-haired wizard captivating a young Grindelwald and leaving a teenage Dumbledore battered and bruised. "No one has ever wielded time magic without a price," Dumbledore mused, recalling how John had defied the known limits of magic. He managed it, somehow appearing in the past and returning to the present by means other than the time-turner. Dumbledore glanced at his 2 blackened fingers, a constant reminder of John's miraculous survival and resurrection after facing Voldemort's deadliest curse. John had delved into the forbidden realms of time, soul, and death, exposing himself to spiritual corruption far beyond that of ordinary wizards. "Do you not trust him?" Snape inquired, puzzled by Dumbledore's stance. "He vanquished Voldemort. Why would you not support him when he poses no threat of return?" "I do trust him," Dumbledore admitted, his voice tinged with rare uncertainty. "But I cannot gamble with the fate of the entire world, Severus." Snape shook his head, his indifference palpable. "You cannot halt his ascent. His youth, his talent, his power," Snape continued. "You stand powerless before him, despite being the greatest wizard of our time." "But would you confront him, Dumbledore?" Snape challenged. Dumbledore found himself at an impasse. Whether it was Joel from the past or John in the present, neither warranted enmity or distrust. Yet Dumbledore grappled with this contradiction. "We need someone who can guide him back, should he stray in the future. Someone to stand by him when all others have departed," Dumbledore finally said, looking intently at Snape. "Harry Potter." "Harry Potter?" Snape couldn't help but smile for the first time in Dumbledore's presence. "You don't seriously believe he can stand against the king of the wizarding world, do you?" Snape's voice dripped with sarcasm. "Do you think John Wick will value the friendship of his peers enough to spare him?" "Yes, I do believe so," Dumbledore responded firmly. "Harry has aided John before, and John will protect him in return." Snape's breath hitched at Dumbledore's audacious words. "What you need is not an heir, but a psychiatrist from the Muggle world, Dumbledore," Snape retorted coldly. "You've lost your mind. You're gambling with Harry Potter's life as if—" Snape trailed off, unable to finish. "As I once did with Voldemort?" Dumbledore sighed, a weary expression crossing his face. "Even you haven't realized that our acknowledgement of him has inadvertently made us disciples to a king, Severus." Snape was taken aback, speechless at the realization. "I may not fully understand John, but there's another I do," Dumbledore said, turning his gaze back to the Pensieve, where Grindelwald's malevolent visage lingered. "Grindelwald, I know him well. His time in Nurmengard hasn't dampened his ambition to transform the wizarding world. He won't make the same mistakes. Every move he makes is a step towards his ultimate goal." A look of exhaustion crept over Dumbledore's features. To elevate magic to greatness once more, and if he cannot achieve it himself, there's only one person who can assist him. "John Wick," Dumbledore voiced his suspicion, causing Snape to recoil in disbelief. After a moment of tension, Snape stepped forward, his face contorted with anger, and declared, "I will no longer serve you, Dumbledore." With those final words, Snape turned and strode towards the door. "That's for Harry," Dumbledore called out, halting him momentarily. After a brief pause, Snape opened the door and left. Dumbledore's gaze lingered on Grindelwald's sinister image within the Pensieve, lost in thought. After a brief moment, there was a knock on the door. "Dumbledore, may I come in? What's the matter?" Harry asked, his voice laced with confusion as he entered the room. Dumbledore gazed at Harry with a profound intensity, his eyes keeping a mix of wisdom and concern. "Harry," he began, his voice steady yet filled with an underlying urgency, "the only force capable of restraining the king is emotion." Harry, taken aback by Dumbledore's solemn tone, moved closer, his curiosity piqued. The room, usually filled with a comforting warmth, seemed to hold a heavier air today. Dumbledore's office, with its walls lined with ancient books and the ever-whimsical instruments whirring softly in the background, felt unusually serious. "Dumbledore, I don't understand. What king are you talking about? And what does emotion have to do with it?" Harry's brow furrowed, trying to decipher Dumbledore's cryptic message. Dumbledore leaned forward, his hands clasped together as if to gather his thoughts. "Harry, in our world, power can often be a double-edged sword. It can protect, but it can also destroy. The king I speak of is not a person, but rather a metaphor for the immense power that lies within you. And like any great power, it must be tempered with emotion, compassion, love, empathy. These are the forces that can guide your power towards the light rather than letting it succumb to darkness." Harry listened intently, the weight of Dumbledore's words slowly sinking in. He had always known that his journey was not just about learning spells or fighting dark forces. It was also about understanding the depth of his own heart. "Sir, how do I ensure that my emotions remain my strength and not become my weakness?" Harry asked, his voice tinged with a newfound determination. Dumbledore smiled, a gentle, reassuring smile that seemed to lighten the room. "Ah, Harry, that is a question that many wizards much older than you still struggle with. The key is to always stay true to yourself, to remember the love you have for your friends, and the compassion that drives you to fight for what is right. Let those emotions be your guide, and you will find the balance you seek." Harry nodded, a sense of clarity dawning upon him. He understood now that his journey was as much about mastering his emotions as it was about mastering magic. With a heart filled with gratitude, he looked at Dumbledore, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead with a renewed sense of purpose. "Thank you, Dumbledore. I think I understand now," Harry said, his voice steady and confident. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled, a sign that Harry had come to recognize as approval. "Very well, Harry. Remember, the greatest strength lies not in the power itself, but in how you choose to wield it." With those final words of wisdom, Harry left Dumbledore's office, feeling a sense of peace and determination. He knew that the path ahead would be fraught with challenges, but armed with the knowledge that his emotions could be his greatest ally, he felt ready to face whatever the future held. Chapter 592, Iron Guard Protection, Divine Guard Body Protection at the Star Club. John watched as a small golden figure leaped onto his palm. These golden figures, devoid of eyes and noses, were crafted from runes and soul fragments that John had experimented with. As a result, they possessed an independent consciousness and recognized John, their creator, as their master. "Perhaps I should teach you something more," John mused, his eyes narrowing thoughtfully. With a flick of his wand, he conjured a door through which a torrent of water surged into the room. Guided by magic, the water amassed above the round table, forming a colossal sphere. "Iron Guard Protection," John declared. At the wave of his wand, the dense water sphere burst apart, and from it descended a 3-meter-tall water guardian. The little golden figure scampered around in alarm. "Be still," John commanded, raising his hand. Mirroring his action, the water guardian also raised its hand, calming the golden figure's fears. Curiosity piqued, the golden figure approached the water guardian. John instructed the water guardian to crouch down and handed it the golden figure from his right palm. "It's time for some modifications," he announced. Pointing his wand at the golden figure, it exploded into numerous runes that swirled around the wand. "Guardian," John intoned. The golden runes soared towards the water guardian, weaving into its body like veins, eventually converging at the heart to form a small golden orb. After a moment of silence, the golden orb within the water guardian's heart pulsed. The guardian, initially lifeless, lifted its head, its expression one of confusion. Upon spotting its little golden companion, it gave chase, only to be evaded, leaving it visibly disheartened. "The space here is too confined," John observed, glancing around. With a snap of his fingers, he opened a door to a vast plain, which expanded to encompass them, transforming the surroundings into an open field. With a wave of his wand, John summoned 3 towering figures from the soil of the plain. One charged towards the water guardian, now named Shui Wei. "Shui Wei, give it your all," John commanded, his voice carrying the weight of an imperial decree. Shui Wei charged forward, and as their fists collided, a shockwave rippled through the air. Shui Wei's arm exploded but regrew in an instant, albeit slightly smaller. With a whip-like motion, Shui Wei's arm sliced through the figure's waist, demonstrating mastery over its water-formed body. Encouraged, John directed the remaining figures towards Shui Wei, who responded by transforming its arms into long whips that spun in a deadly dance, severing the attackers in half. "It worked well," John acknowledged, approaching Shui Wei. Without hesitation, he reached into Shui Wei's chest, extracting the golden orb. The water guardian disintegrated, leaving John with the orb in his hand. With a breath, the orb dissolved into runes and reformed into the golden figure. As he made the planes vanish, returning to the Star Club, John placed the little golden figure on the table, contemplating its performance. "The weakness is too apparent," he noted. The elemental body's defense was lacking, and the golden figure could only control the water body he had created for it. The magic power within the water body determined its lifespan, and repairs also depleted its elemental composition. However, there was a silver lining. The golden figure's integration into the Water Guardian had endowed it with a self-preservation instinct, relieving John of the need to constantly oversee it. "It seems I need to train you further," John concluded, dissatisfied with the Water Guardian's performance in battle. They had merely stood in place, lacking the instinct to dodge, relying solely on their ability to regenerate. John had devised a unique method of combat, incorporating elements to create a formidable battle strategy. He gathered 50 golden figurines, which upon detonation transformed into runes that scattered across the sky. With a fly, CK of his wand, John invoked a spell named God's Bodyguard. This spell birthed guardians from natural elements. Stone guardians emerged from rocks, tree guardians sprouted from trees, fire guardians arose from flames, and ice guardians materialized from snow. The golden runes infused into these entities, animating the 2-meter-tall guardians. Meanwhile, John embarked on his own rigorous training regimen. At Hogwarts, Malfoy gazed at John's empty seat, visibly confused. "What's John up to now?" he wondered aloud. "He's always busy with something," Daphne remarked, rolling her eyes at Malfoy's curiosity. Despite her words, Malfoy couldn't help but notice that Daphne's attention had shifted away from him recently. He decided to change the subject, making plans with Astoria for the upcoming Christmas holiday. Astoria, observing her sister's unusual behavior, expressed her concern. "What's bothering you, Daphne?" she inquired, suspecting John might be the reason for her sister's distress. Daphne hesitated before voicing her worry. "Do you think my cooking is good?" she asked tentatively. Astoria was taken aback. Recalling the meals her sister had prepared, she found it difficult to describe them as delicious. "I'm not sure it's to John's taste," Daphne admitted, looking dejected. Astoria, puzzled, asked, "What does John like to eat?" "I don't know," Daphne replied, her frustration evident. Astoria sighed, witnessing her sister's love-struck confusion. She turned to Malfoy for insight. "Draco, do you know John's favorite food?" Malfoy, caught off guard, guessed potatoes. His response led to an amusing incident where Daphne, in her frustration, stuffed 3 potatoes into Malfoy's mouth. Despite this, Daphne's concerns lingered, leading her to question whether her culinary skills were the issue. Later, Malfoy found himself the subject of ridicule, with potatoes still in his mouth, the straw becoming a spectacle in the foyer. Daphne's worries persisted throughout the day. In the evening, she found herself in the kitchen, contemplating her lack of culinary talent. Just as she was about to give up, a tantalizing aroma caught her attention. Following the scent, she stumbled upon Hannah Abbott, who was cooking a stew for Neville Longbottom to help him recover from a tiring day with the mandrakes. Daphne, intrigued by the delicious smell, asked Hannah if she could learn to cook from her. Hannah, surprised by the request, saw the sincerity in Daphne's eyes and agreed to teach her. Daphne, feeling a bit shy, explained that she wanted to improve her cooking skills to be a better partner. Hannah, understanding Daphne's motive and relating to her desire to care for her loved one, welcomed her warmly. "Of course, Daphne," she said, smiling. In that moment, a new friendship was formed, bonded by the shared goal of nurturing their relationships through the art of cooking. Hannah and Daphne had forged a deep friendship over their time at Hogwarts. One evening, Hannah invited Daphne to taste the stew she had been laboring over in the kitchen. As they were about to begin, they realized a crucial ingredient was missing. "We need more potatoes, but we're running low," lamented a house elf, bustling around the kitchen in a state of mild panic. Upon hearing this, another house elf volunteered with a determined nod and scurried off to the storeroom through the same door Daphne had entered moments earlier. Contrary to what one might expect, the room beyond was not a kitchen, but a vast warehouse filled with ingredients, among which were the much-needed potatoes. "Dobby, please move the potatoes out here," called the first house elf, his voice echoing slightly in the spacious room. Dobby, with a twinkle in his eye, responded in his characteristic manner. "Dobby can move himself, but Dobby can also move the potatoes." With a snap of his fingers, the potatoes began to levitate and followed him back into the kitchen. The house elf's efficiency and magical prowess brought a smile to Daphne's face. The kitchen was a flurry of activity, but there was a sense of harmony and purpose in the chaos. The house elves worked together seamlessly, their dedication to their tasks evident in every swift movement and carefully measured ingredient. As the stew simmered to perfection, the aroma filled the kitchen, promising a delightful meal. Hannah and Daphne sat down at a small table, set aside from the hustle and bustle, their anticipation growing with each passing moment. The bond of friendship between them, strengthened by shared experiences and mutual respect, was a comforting constant in the ever-changing world of magic and mystery that surrounded them. Chapter 593: Cultivating Divine Guards and Mending Father-Son Bonds. Under John's meticulous training, the golden figure had begun to grasp the basics of combat. In the expansive plain, Mizuho charged at Phobo with vigorous strides. Whenever water clashed with fire, a mist was born from their encounter. Huowei unleashed a fiery breath, sending a swift tongue of flame towards Shuiwei. In response, the water guardian raised his hands, transforming them into a curtain of water to shield himself. One attacked with fire, while the other defended with water. The battle quickly escalated, and soon, two diminutive figures, no taller than 50 centimeters, were engaged in a fierce exchange of punches and kicks. John watched their struggle with a mix of frustration and amusement. When facing an opponent with a counter-attribute, flexibility is key, he advised, snapping his fingers. At his command, the bodies of the two divine guards burst open, revealing the golden figures within. The tiny combatants tumbled across the plain, locked in their skirmish. "Enough," John called out, halting their fight. The little ones obediently followed him as they entered the club of stars through the plain's gateway. Inside, they immediately set about their tasks. John opened a cabinet and retrieved a bottle filled with stars. After transferring the stars into a small bag, he exited the club of stars, the two little fighters now perched on his shoulders, having momentarily set aside their quarrel. Today, John had an appointment to collect supplies from Hagrid. It was undeniable that Hagrid possessed a unique talent for acquiring all manner of materials. Upon reaching Hagrid's hut, John knocked politely. "I'm here," came Hagrid's voice from the vegetable garden, where he was busy fending off pests. "These creatures are a real nuisance," Hagrid grumbled, expressing a wish for insect repellent. "Sometimes the solution is simpler than you think, Hagrid," John remarked, approaching with his wand drawn. He pointed it at a wooden stake nearby, invoking, "Guardian of the Gods." The stake began to grow, sprouting vines that wrapped around its form. One of the divine guards on John's shoulder transformed into a rune and merged with the tree guardian. Its vine-entwined head now glowing with life, the tree guardian stomped on the pests and extended its vines to root out those hidden in the soil. Astonished, Hagrid gaped at the tree guardian, now as tall as him. "What magic is this?" he exclaimed. "A spell," John replied simply, heading towards the hut. "Is everything ready?" Hagrid, still marveling at John's ingenuity, confirmed that all was prepared, albeit with a caution about the legality of some items. "Magic's creations should not be confined," John declared, stepping into the hut filled with boxes of materials. To facilitate Hagrid's acquisitions, John had established a materials fund at Gringotts. "How will you transport all this?" Hagrid wondered aloud. "With magic, of course," John answered, opening his pouch. The materials were magically drawn into the seemingly bottomless bag, which showed no sign of bulging despite its contents. "And what about that little fellow?" Hagrid inquired, nodding towards the golden figure on John's shoulder. John allowed the divine guard to stand in his palm before handing it to Hagrid. "I call them divine guards," he explained. Hagrid examined the figure with curiosity. "Is this also your magic?" "Somewhat," John admitted, sharing that the divine guards were a serendipitous creation. "I intend to make them unparalleled guardians." Hagrid, accustomed to John's unconventional ideas, handed back the guard. Their attention was diverted by a tapping sound at the window. A snowy owl, clearly agitated, was pecking at the glass. Recognizing the visitor, Hagrid instinctively shielded his beard. "It's Basil," John noted, opening the window to let the owl in. Basil swooped in, displacing the divine guard and landing with a sense of purpose. Perched on John's shoulder, Shenwei shook his head, trying to clear the confusion, while Basil handed a letter to John. Upon opening it, John's expression turned to one of surprise. Why would old Batty seek my advice for buying gifts? The letter was from Barty Crouch Sr. The owl that had delivered the letter was probably mishandled by Basil somewhere along the way. Old Batty was in search of a gift that would appeal to the younger generation and thought John, being young and also a son, would have some good suggestions. However, John found himself at a bit of a loss, unsure of what young people might consider a suitable gift. After pondering over the preferences of the young people he knew, he decided to rely on his own instincts. "I think something cool would be appreciated," John concluded, returning to his dormitory to pen a reply to Old Batty. Before handing the letter over to Basil, John emphasized, "Please, don't harm the Crouch's owl, and steer clear of the Ministry of Magic's owls as well." After rewarding Basil with 3 small dried fish, John entrusted him with the delivery of the letter. Barty Crouch Sr., the Minister of Magic, had his hands full with numerous responsibilities. His role demanded his attention for the busy workings of the International Federation of Wizards, and even required him to check on Grindelwald's activities in Poland. It seemed that the International Federation of Wizards placed their hopes on Crouch, expecting him to devise a strategy against Grindelwald, similar to his efforts against Voldemort. The British magical community, being among the most powerful in Europe, boasted 2 individuals capable of standing up to Grindelwald. However, Crouch knew all too well that neither of these assets was within his control. Thus, when Grindelwald made his appearance in Poland, Crouch remained a cautious observer, now holding the position he had initially sought. Yet, the Crouch family legacy still cast him as an adversary. "Something cool?" Crouch Sr. pondered in his office, puzzled by John's suggestion. His understanding of young people's interests was limited, but the mention of cool brought to mind flying broomsticks. He used to enjoy Quidditch as well, Crouch recalled, realizing how distant he had become from his son's preferences. His past actions, particularly his rash decision to send Barty Jr. to Azkaban, filled him with regret and a desire to make amends. Determined to reconcile with his son, Crouch visited a Quidditch boutique and inquired, "What's the best broomstick available?" The shop owner, with a gleam in his eye, responded, "The Firebolt, without a doubt." He led Crouch to a display where the Firebolt lay, its craftsmanship promising unparalleled performance in professional competitions. The price, however, was equivalent to Crouch's annual salary. Despite the cost, Crouch, motivated by the thought of repairing their strained relationship, made the purchase. It was only later that he realized his oversight. Barty Jr. only had one hand, complicating the act of flying. With the broomstick in tow, Crouch Sr. made his way to Knockdown Gardens, where Barty Jr. worked as a gardener and occasionally visited Silverhand Manor. Barty Jr., now accustomed to the tranquility of gardening, was planting flower seeds when he noticed his father's approach. Without acknowledgement, he continued his work, moving to another area with a bucket. "Son," Crouch Sr. began hesitantly, offering the broomstick, "I remember you used to enjoy Quidditch." Barty Jr. spared a glance at the broomstick before responding indifferently, "I don't like it anymore." This response deeply saddened Crouch Sr., who, after a moment of silence, offered, "If you wish, you can return to the Crouch residence." "Do you recall what you said?" Barty Jr. replied coldly as he walked past his father, "Your son is dead." "Son," Crouch Sr. implored, setting down the broomstick, "how can I earn your forgiveness?" Barty halted in his tracks, casting a glance back at his father. With a tone dripping in mockery, he posed a question. "Do you know what I find utterly intolerable about you?" He muttered to himself, "It's your manner of speaking. You never admit to being wrong. All you care about is ensuring the last blood of the Crouch family doesn't perish." The elder Crouch's face clouded over with a mix of anger and sorrow as he attempted to interject. "I didn't." "When I was younger," Barty continued, his gaze piercing through the weathered lines of his father's face, "I diligently followed your directives, immersing myself in studies and striving for excellence, all in a bid to earn your attention and perhaps a sliver of pride. Yet, not once did I hear words of encouragement or approval from you. I believed I had to be exemplary. If I fell short, it was solely because I hadn't exerted enough effort," he said, his voice laced with a mixture of defiance and disappointment. "What you sought wasn't a son, but a compliant puppet, a good boy who would never question your authority," Barty declared, locking eyes with his father, his voice steady and resolute. "I cannot fulfill that role." The elder Crouch, mouth agape, could only watch as his son walked away, a figure of dejection. He was burdened with a torrent of unspoken words, yearning to express that Barty Jr. had always been his pride. Yet those words remained trapped unuttered as the distance between father and son grew. Chapter 594, Hannah's Regret and Daphne's Triumph. As Christmas approached, Professor McGonagall requested that students complete the annual form indicating whether they would stay at Hogwarts for the holiday. The weather grew colder, prompting everyone to bundle up in their scarves. The green scarves of Slytherin seemed to blend with the snowy landscape, exuding a chilly aura, while Gryffindor's red scarves radiated warmth, reminiscent of a comforting flame. The biting cold of winter meant that the kale in the greenhouse had died down, and Neville no longer needed to stand guard over it. This development left Hannah Abbott feeling a touch of disappointment. Under the bare branches of an oak tree, the two shared a moment. "I won't be able to cook for you anymore," Hannah said, her voice tinged with regret. Neville, puzzled, asked, "Why not?" "Because you'll be eating in the Great Hall. You won't need my cooking," she explained. "No," Neville countered, shaking his head emphatically. "I love your cooking. It's something I look forward to." Hannah blushed at Neville's words, which felt like an awkward yet sincere declaration of affection. She extended her finger, proposing, "Then it's settled. You'll continue to enjoy my meals." Neville, a bit shyly, agreed. "I promise." Their fingers touched, sealing the promise with a simple gesture. The following day, an enticing aroma filled the Great Hall. Draco Malfoy, intrigued, declared, "Today's meal smells incredible." He eagerly tried to locate the source of the scent, his curiosity leading him to the Gryffindor table, right next to a surprised Ron Weasley. "What are you staring at?" Malfoy snapped before turning to Neville and asking, "What is that? It smells amazing." Neville, feeling a bit protective, replied, "I brought it from home." Malfoy scoffed, though his interest in Neville's lunchbox remained unabated. Ron, too, seemed captivated by the aroma. Suddenly, Malfoy attempted to snatch a bite with the speed of lightning. However, Neville's reflexes were quicker. He caught Malfoy's hand and effortlessly tossed him back to the Slytherin table. Malfoy was left questioning his life choices, marveling at Neville's unexpected strength. "Neville's been improving," he admitted, acknowledging that Neville's physical prowess was now second only to John's. John, too, noticed Neville's transformation, attributing it to the Longbottom family's recent growth spurt. Neville, once around 1.8 meters tall, now seemed to have surpassed 1.9 meters. Amidst the commotion, Daphne Greengrass watched with a mysterious box in her hands. John, noticing her, asked, "Daphne, what's that?" "I've prepared something even more delicious than Neville's lunch," Daphne declared confidently. John's response was mixed. "You don't have to try so hard. Just be yourself," he advised. Daphne was puzzled by his reaction, as was Malfoy, who echoed John's sentiment from an upside-down position in the hallway, wondering why his advice led to his current predicament. "Daphne, this time will be different," John said, bracing himself. "I trust you, just as you trust me." Encouraged by John's words, Daphne smiled and slowly opened her carefully prepared lunchbox. The entire Slytherin table watched in anticipation, ready to witness Daphne's culinary achievement. They all held their breath, gathering around the lunchbox with an air of anticipation. Astoria clasped her hands together, her expression one of devout hope, silently praying that her sister had finally managed to prepare a palatable meal. Pansy, overwhelmed by nerves, clutched Theodore's hand tightly, her anxiety peaking, surpassing even the fluttery tension of her first kiss. From his desk, Slughorn couldn't resist standing to get a better look at the Slytherins, puzzled by their unusual congregation. Hannah, with her eyes tightly shut, reminisced about the culinary adventures she had endured with Daphne. The memories of chocolate rice rolls, stir-fried blueberries with tomatoes, udon noodles drenched in cuttlefish ink, and an array of beza-ray fruit combinations paraded through her mind, each dish more bewildering than the last. A tear of regret escaped her, tracing a path down her cheek. Since the day she had first encountered Daphne's cooking, it felt as though she had descended into a culinary hell. "Hannah, what's wrong?" Ernie asked, unable to decipher the cause of her sudden melancholy. Wiping away her tears, Hannah managed a bright smile and said, "It's good to be alive." her voice tinged with a hard-earned appreciation for the simpler things. Ernie, baffled, could only wonder, "What have you been through? You're only 17. He could never truly grasp the depth of Hannah's emotional journey. The moment Daphne lifted the lid of the lunchbox, a blinding light emanated from within, revealing a dish that defied all expectations. Inside lay perfectly cooked rice, topped with stewed meat prepared under Hannah's guidance. The meat, tender and inviting, was generously ladled over the rice, with broccoli florets adding a touch of color. The dish was simple, yet it promised a burst of flavor. The onlooker's eyes widened in disbelief. Astoria, overcome with emotion, embraced Pansy, both of them shedding tears of joy. Slughorn, still at a loss, wondered aloud, "What's gotten into them? There's no competition. What's there to be so happy about?" The Slytherins erupted into applause, their cheers resonating like an early Christmas celebration. "Finally, a normal dish," Blaise exclaimed, his excitement palpable. For once, Daphne had prepared a meal that not only looked edible, but was actually appetizing. This culinary success held the promise of changing Daphne's social fortunes, much to the delight of her housemates. All eyes turned to John, their gazes heavy with unspoken pleas. "Try it." John, equally taken aback by the transformation in Daphne's cooking, hesitantly picked up a piece of meat. As he tasted it, his eyes widened in astonishment, not just at the flavor, but at the unexpected sensation of magic infused within the dish. "It contains not just nutrition, but magic," John mused, examining the rice more closely, finding nothing out of the ordinary. "How did you do this?" he asked Daphne. "Of course," Daphne began, her voice trailing off as she admitted. "Hannah helped a bit." John's curiosity was piqued. "How exactly did you do it?" he pressed, sensing there was more to the dish than mere culinary skill. Daphne hesitated, trying to recall the process. "First, we prepared the meat, and then—" "No, I mean, did you use something special?" John interrupted. "Special?" Daphne appeared confused. "I don't remember using anything special." John's thoughts raced. If it wasn't a special ingredient, then it must be magic. His gaze shifted to the Hufflepuff table, a realization dawning on him. Could Hannah possess a talent for kitchen magic? Chapter 595, Midnight Kitchen, Double the Deliciousness. After that incident, Daphne seemed to regain her confidence and began to cook more frequently. "This one," she announced with a flourish, presenting her latest creation. "Tianchao dumplings," John exclaimed, biting into the dough and discovering the unexpected filling of chocolate pearls. It was a novel experience for him, having never encountered such a combination in his previous life. "What is this?" Malfoy, arriving hungry from training, couldn't resist the temptation and grabbed a dumpling, risking Daphne's wrath. He had expected Daphne to maintain a certain standard, but he was sorely mistaken. Choking and turning a shade of purple, Malfoy knocked over the debris on the table in his frantic search for water. "Water! Give me water!" he gasped, reaching desperately for a glass that was just out of reach. Just as he was about to grasp it, Gore stumbled by, accidentally knocking the glass over. Malfoy was left speechless, wondering if it was a deliberate act or a mere accident. Eventually, he recovered, clutching his stomach and questioning his life choices. "This is the worst thing I've ever eaten. I'd rather eat a raw potato than try it again," he declared, oblivious to Daphne's increasingly distressed expression. "What is this? A torture device newly developed by Filch? If so, he wins hands down, and no one would dare break the rules again." Fuchsia! In a moment of anger, Malfoy found himself hanging upside down, as Daphne wiped away her tears and fled the scene. John silently observed Malfoy, the first to make Daphne cry, and considered the situation. Malfoy felt wronged. He was merely speaking the truth, and now found himself punished without anyone to defend him. Even Astoria was furious, scolding, "Draco, you are too much," before rushing after her sister. John sighed, released Malfoy from the spell, and offered some advice. "Continuing like this will be very dangerous for you, Draco. Your actions have already started affecting your standing in the Star Club. If this continues, you might find yourself isolated in the wizarding world." Malfoy, feeling awkward, admitted, "Perhaps I was too harsh, but Daphne's cooking this time really wasn't up to her usual standard. Perhaps delicious cooking requires a certain secret," John mused, having noticed that the dumplings lacked the magical touch of Daphne's previous dishes. Was there a difference in the preparation? Changing the subject, John mentioned, "I don't think I can go back for Christmas this year." He glanced at the Gryffindor table, where Hannah presented Neville with a heart bento. Neville, grateful and rejuvenated after eating, praised the meal. Hannah, delighted, promised to prepare something different the next day. "Keeping a sense of mystery can make food more enticing," she said with a mischievous smile, unaware of the culinary adventure she was about to embark on with Daphne's treasured Chinese wizard Chen recipe. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, Hannah found Daphne in tears. "What's wrong?" she asked, concerned. Daphne, chopping onions, blamed her tears on the pungent vegetable. Hannah, seeing through the facade, reassured her. "We're friends, Daphne. It's not the onions." Daphne confessed her frustration with her cooking. Hannah, ever supportive, whispered some advice, promising a solution. Daphne, hesitant but hopeful, agreed to meet Hannah in the kitchen that night. Together they embarked on a culinary journey, determined to blend their talents and create dishes that would delight and surprise their friends. The midnight kitchen became a place of laughter, learning, and the delicious aroma of friendship and innovation. Under the cloak of night, after the curfew had settled its quiet over Hogwarts, John closed the tome titled Dark God Book with a sigh. The crease between his brows deepened, a testament to his concern. To counteract the second stage of the curse, we must remember Astoria is not Daphne. Her condition is far more severe, and it's uncertain if there are further stages to this affliction, he murmured to himself. With a decisive knock on his desk, the scattered parchments around his room coalesced back into a neat stack. Rising from his chair, he made his way out, only to find Daphne sneaking out of the common room. Curiosity piqued. John followed her, his presence diminished by the night demon's blessing, making him nearly invisible in the dim corridors. Daphne, preoccupied with her own thoughts, failed to notice him trailing behind. Together, yet apart, they ventured towards the kitchen. Upon entering, they were greeted by Hannah, who waved enthusiastically at Daphne. "Look," she urged, pointing towards the warehouse door that swung open and closed as if breathing. The sign on it morphed before their eyes, the words transforming into a symbol that combined a fork, a knife, and a magic wand, with a pot at the base. "This is the Midnight Kitchen. It appears only at night. Inside, even the simplest dishes are imbued with magic, making them taste extraordinary," Hannah explained with a hint of pride. As they stepped into the Midnight Kitchen, they were met with a sight vastly different from the ordinary kitchen outside. Fresh ingredients and gleaming utensils awaited their use, promising culinary delights. "To satiate hunger is the greatest joy," read an inscription on the table, which seemed to quiver with life under Daphne's touch. Suddenly, the teapots and stools sprang to life, offering their services in a display that left both Daphne and Hannah in awe. Despite Hannah's familiarity with the kitchen, this animated welcome was a first for her as well. Their wonder was interrupted by the arrival of John, who had followed them in unnoticed. "I had no idea such a magical place existed within Hogwarts," he remarked, taking a seat as the furniture and utensils busied themselves in hospitality. The kitchen seemed to have a mind of its own, urging the chefs to prepare a feast for their unexpected guests. This kitchen, a creation of Helga Hufflepuff herself, is a testament to the magic of culinary arts, the teapot informed them, revealing the history behind this enchanted space. As they settled into this unexpected adventure, the boundaries between them softened, united by the marvels of the Midnight Kitchen. The magic of Hogwarts had once again brought its inhabitants together, weaving a tale of friendship and discovery in the most unexpected of places. In charge of catering at Hogwarts, the kitchen has always been a place of delight, entertaining distinguished wizards throughout the ages. The four founders used to gather here, drinking and conversing, laying down the foundations of the great Hogwarts, John remarked with evident fascination. "So, you've been here all this time?" he inquired, his curiosity piqued. "Of course," the teapot responded with a hint of pride in its voice. "Hufflepuff herself used to hold me as she poured tea for the other three founders. However, I must admit, I harbor a bit of resentment towards Gryffindor. He once broke my handle." The teapot was no ordinary object of transfiguration. It possessed a level of wisdom akin to that of the Sorting Hat, a fact that John found both novel and intriguing. This revelation added a layer of historical significance to the kitchen, making it not just a place for preparing meals, but a witness to the early days of Hogwarts, where the founders themselves once roamed. Chapter 596, The Pot Treasure and the Thunderous Explosion. I'm not fond of Slytherin either. He always wants to involve me in those dreadful potion concoctions, the teapot lamented with a hint of disdain in its voice. Ravenclaw, on the other hand, is more to my liking. She never fails to admire my beauty while pouring tea, it continued, its tone softening with the mention of Ravenclaw. However, my utmost favorite has to be Hufflepuff. She's the one who created me and blessed me with a charming name, Pot-Pot, the teapot declared proudly, its voice filled with affection for its creator. The teapot's incessant chatter made the atmosphere at the table almost unbearable. "Enough, teapot," someone exclaimed in frustration. "You should learn some manners and address me properly as Pot-Pot," the teapot retorted, undeterred by the interruption. The absurdity of a teapot and a table engaging in an argument was beyond comprehension. The two girls present found themselves overwhelmed by the situation. John observed, "This is the Hufflepuff domain, and I suspect activating something here might bring these objects to life." "I'm not sure. I've never been here before," Hannah responded quickly, shaking her head in uncertainty. Meanwhile, the cabinet continued to emit smoke, its impatience growing. "Hurry, chef," it bellowed. Daphne, upon noticing John's presence, remained calm and inquired, "What should we do?" "Based on their hints," John replied with a shrug, "I'm actually quite hungry. Hopefully, there's something here that can satisfy my appetite." "This kitchen is unparalleled," the teapot interjected, seizing every opportunity to boast. "Simply name the ingredient, and it shall appear," it informed the two girls. "But do hurry. The cabinet has a temper and is prone to destruction when angered." "Let's get cooking, Hannah," Daphne suggested, understanding the urgency of John's words. She took Hannah, who was visibly pale, by the hand and led her to the cooking area. "Aprons," the cabinet commanded, its voice stern like that of a strict chef. "Don your aprons, cooks!" The girls quickly complied, donning the aprons provided. "Maintain cleanliness," the cabinet continued to instruct. "Every ingredient must be pristine, as must your hands." Hannah felt on the verge of tears, overwhelmed by the pressure of being scrutinized and reprimanded by such a demanding figure. "What should we do?" Daphne whispered to Hannah, who was at a loss for words. Feeling the urgency, Daphne glanced at John for guidance. He suggested something quick, easy, and filling. Lowering his expectations, Daphne spotted the potatoes and formulated a plan. "Let's peel these potatoes and make mashed potatoes," she proposed to Hannah, who, ironically, found herself in the role of the student rather than the teacher. They began peeling the potatoes, and John shook his head in disbelief. "You're wizards. Use magic," he thought to himself, unable to watch as they clumsily peeled the potatoes. "This isn't the secret chamber," John mused, his system not indicating any discovery of Hufflepuff's secret chamber. Yet, his arrival seemed to have activated some mechanism, bringing these objects to life. What triggers the entrance to the secret chamber? John pondered, scanning the room. Unlike Ravenclaw's Chamber of Secrets, which was concealed behind a painting, there were no paintings here. His fingers traced the engravings on the table, eliciting laughter from it. "Apologies, esteemed guest, that tickles," the table said, shaking with laughter, causing the teapot and cups to rattle. "Hu Bao, why do you address me as a distinguished guest?" John inquired. Hu Bao responded respectfully, "I sense the presence of the four founders within you." John realized it must be due to the artifacts of the four founders he had interacted with, leaving their essence upon him. "Are many visitors drawn to this place?" John asked, his gaze returning to the girls, who were now hurriedly preparing the food. "Wait, was that durian Daphne added to the potatoes?" And a ginger." John's concern grew as he watched their unconventional cooking choices. Hu Bao pondered for a moment before answering. "Occasionally, a young wizard stumbles in, usually in search of a meal. The most recent visitor was remarkable. She cooked with such love," Hu Bao reminisced, clearing the tea with a reverent tone. "Hufflepuff would have been proud." "The secret to delicious food," they say, "is to infuse it with emotion. The anger in fried fish, the tenderness in bread, the warmth in stew, the freshness in apple pie, Each dish requires a unique kind of magic. This intriguing theory, as John noted with surprise, had fallen into obscurity. Something must have happened to Hufflepuff, he mused. Indeed, she was an exceptional wizard, Hubao responded, appreciating John's reverence for Hufflepuff. Slytherin's departure affected her deeply. She never cooked the same way again. She used to cook for her friends, but after Slytherin left, their gatherings became rare. Hogwarts has since built a new kitchen, and this place has been forgotten, Hubao explained, his spout drooping in sadness. He cherished the memories of the four founders, despite their differences. Gryffindors with their carefree spirit, Slytherins with their sometimes questionable potions. A kitchen filled with such emotions was unparalleled. Even after disputes, they would come together to enjoy a hearty meal of cod. Now that they're gone, our existence seems pointless, Hubao lamented. There will be new wizards who will discover this place, John reassured him, observing the food being prepared. They will bring their friends here, just like the four founders did. Hubao's spout perked up at this thought. However, a peculiar smell soon filled the air, causing John to sigh. "John, this dish is called fried thunder," he announced, noticing the ginger paste still smeared on Daphne's face from an earlier mishap. The dish was an odd combination of mashed potatoes mixed with ginger, durian for texture, and topped with what appeared to be tomato sauce. John hesitated, while Hannah eyed the so-called exploding minds with skepticism. "No, why subject me to this? Take it away, I can't bear it," the plate protested. John, undeterred, scooped up a spoonful. "You're not seriously going to eat that, are you?" Hubao exclaimed. John, tapping the table, responded calmly, "There's joy in simply filling one's stomach." The table chuckled. "Don't touch me, it tickles." Upon tasting the thunderbolt, John's eyes widened in surprise. The dish, despite its odd texture and peculiar ingredients, contained a significant amount of magical power. He looked at Daphne, realizing the emotions she poured into the dish had transformed into magical energy. He continued to eat, finding some redeeming qualities, such as the genuine ketchup. After finishing the plate, John calmly wiped his mouth, his attention drawn to a peculiar lock on the back of a cabinet. 3 out of 4 locks remained, piquing his curiosity. John then turned to Daphne. "I hope there are other dishes to try." Daphne, momentarily surprised, quickly brightened. "You liked it?" she asked. "Well, I'm open to trying more," John replied diplomatically, unable to admit his lack of taste. Daphne's joy was palpable as she embraced Hannah, both jumping excitedly. The irritable chef, spurred by the request for more dishes, angrily tossed 2 bowls from the cabinet. "The honored guests wish to order more? Then let's hurry." The duo dodged the flying tableware as they returned to the cooking area, Daphne now confidently directing Hannah in their culinary efforts. Hubao, impressed, said, "I can't believe you actually ate it." John simply shrugged, his interest still fixed on the cabinet's locks. "No big deal," he said nonchalantly. The mystery of what lay behind the cabinet lingered in his mind as Hubao, now fully won over by John's adventurous spirit, eagerly refilled his teacup with hot tea. In the kitchen, amidst the symphony of clattering utensils, the second course was served. Typhoon Shelter, fried noodles. The noodles, curiously levitating above the plate, seemed to dance in an invisible breeze. John, observing this peculiar spectacle, couldn't help but ponder, why add special effects to cooking? The question lingered in the air, much like the noodles themselves, as John's gaze remained fixed on the floating dish. The kitchen, a place of culinary magic, had transformed the mundane act of preparing food into a spectacle of whimsy and wonder. Yet, this whimsicality brought forth a blend of amusement and perplexity in John, who was unaccustomed to such extraordinary presentations. As he contemplated the spectacle before him, the noodles finally settled gently onto the plate, as if the invisible typhoon had suddenly calmed. John, still bemused by the experience, realized that this was no ordinary meal. It was an adventure, a journey through flavors and sensations, enhanced by the visual and kinetic artistry of the chef. With a newfound appreciation for the creativity and skill involved, John prepared to delve into the dish. The Typhoon Shelter fried noodles, now resting peacefully on the plate, promised a gustatory experience as intriguing as its presentation. As he took his first bite, the flavors exploded in his mouth, a testament to the chef's mastery in blending the traditional with the extraordinary. The meal continued, each course an exploration of culinary innovation and artistic expression. John, initially skeptical of the need for such theatrics in cooking, found himself enchanted by the experience. The kitchen had become a stage, and the chef, a magician, conjuring up dishes that delighted not only the palate, but also the imagination. As the final course was served, John reflected on the evening's culinary journey. The special effects, once a source of bewilderment, had elevated the dining experience, transforming it into a memorable adventure. In this fusion of flavor and fantasy, John discovered the true essence of culinary artistry, the ability to inspire wonder and joy through the alchemy of food. Chapter 597, The Culinary Secrets of Hufflepuff. Professor Binns, known for his impartiality, once mentioned that Hufflepuff's secret chamber was a place of great interest. Unlike the chambers of other founders, which might contain powerful alchemy or grand magic, Hufflepuff's chamber was believed to hold something more personal, perhaps a cherished memory or a deep regret. This intrigued John, who had always been fascinated by the lesser-known aspects of Hogwarts. After enjoying a meal of fried noodles at the Typhoon Shelter, John found himself puzzled over his decision to eat the gills of a crab. Cleansing his palate with tea, he declared in a calm voice, "I'll have another one." To his surprise, a second lock on the large cabinet clicked open. It became clear to John that the way to unlock Hufflepuff's Chamber of Secrets was through eating. Hannah, watching him, couldn't hide her astonishment. "Do you really want more?" she asked. "Absolutely," John replied, his tone suggesting a mix of determination and curiosity. "Perhaps I do have quite the appetite." Hannah observed John with a complex gaze. The items he had consumed were not for the faint-hearted. It was evident that John, the proclaimed king of Hogwarts, was no ordinary individual. She pondered whether the Quunxing Club shared his unique tastes. Daphne, eager to contribute, quickly prepared a new dish. This time, a West Coast blue lobster was served. The sight of the blue-dyed meat inside the lobster's head gave John pause. Despite lacking a sense of taste, the unusual color was off-putting. Nevertheless, he closed his eyes and ate it, determined to unlock the secrets of the chamber. Course after course, John continued his unusual feast. With each bite, he unlocked another part of the mystery, until finally, the last lock clicked open. The cabinet, as if acknowledging its defeat, violently ejected its contents and announced, "My back is open." John, with a flick of his wand, levitated the cabinet and inspected its back. A hidden compartment revealed itself, spilling out numerous parchments. Daphne picked one up and read aloud in disbelief. 100 ways to make potatoes? Hannah found another. The complete recipe for Scottish round-faced fat chicken? A notification rang in John's mind, confirming their discovery of Hufflepuff's Chamber of Secrets and setting them a new challenge, to find the secret rooms of the remaining founders before the school year ended. John, intrigued, picked up a parchment that read, "Recipe for Winged Lion Tenderloin." It dawned on them that these were not ordinary recipes, but cooking methods for magical creatures. Flipping through more parchments, John realized that many of the ingredients were from protected magical animals. It was clear why Hufflepuff had chosen to hide these recipes. They had become illegal over time. "I should have realized," John said with a wry smile, feeling neither regret nor affection. This was the last act of defiance from a true food enthusiast. John reflected on Professor Binns' words, understanding now that Hufflepuff was never one to hoard secrets. If these recipes were known throughout Hogwarts, it was likely that many wizards would graduate with a penchant for the forbidden arts of culinary magic. Hu Bao, who had been listening intently, chimed in, "I remember this because Hufflepuff had." The discovery of 100 cooking methods of magical animals by the other founders of Hogwarts must have elicited mixed feelings. "I suppose I can handle Hufflepuff," John mused, shaking his head as he accepted the recipe book. His gaze landed on the section titled Ways to Cook Potatoes, and he remarked, "This section is worth keeping." He had grown tired of the monotonous potato dishes the house elves had been serving for years. He hoped that the recipes from Hufflepuff would teach them a valuable lesson. Hannah, still in shock, asked, "Are these really Hufflepuff's recipes?" John shrugged. She was an exceptional kitchen witch. It appears the other founders didn't think these dishes were small. A table for the Hogwarts table. That's outrageous, Hannah exclaimed, her anger palpable. How could they dismiss these recipes? John gently suggested. Hannah, you might want to take a closer look. Over half of these recipes violate the Fantastic Beasts Protection Act. As Hannah perused the book, her disbelief grew. The only items that seemed remotely suitable for the table were potatoes and the Scottish round-faced fat chicken, which, to the horror of many, was actually an owl. No wizard, not even the most ruthless dark wizard, would consider eating such a loyal creature known for delivering mail. To honor the founder of Hufflepuff, the three decided to keep this matter a secret. However, the revelation about the secret chamber came from an unexpected source, the irascible chef in the Midnight Kitchen, who had grown up in the cabinet. Anyone willing to eat such unpalatable things must truly be in need of help, the chef had said, a statement that nearly drove Daphne to destroy the kitchen with her laurel wand. Despite the unsettling discoveries, the trip wasn't entirely fruitless. John found inspiration in the Midnight Kitchen's emotional cooking techniques. On the second night, within the Star Club, John stirred his cauldron, contemplating. Hufflepuff used emotion as a guide, allowing magical power to imbue food with different effects through special methods akin to potion making, he mused. Stepping away from the cookbook, John entered another room and summoned his Patronus. A white light emanated from the albatross as John, with his eyes closed, pondered, if I infuse it with all my emotion, could it function differently? Upon opening his eyes, he saw the albatross tilting its head, as if in agreement. Then let's try it, John decided, lowering his wand. He looked at the albatross and said, why don't you go home and wish Ariana good night for me? No problem, the albatross replied, taking flight from the Star Society and soaring across the English sky to the Wick house. Ariana was listening to Mrs. Wick's bedtime stories, which often featured tales of John's childhood antics. After the story, Mrs. Wick tenderly wished Ariana good night, addressing her as Little White Flower, a term of endearment that highlighted the deep affection between them. Ariana, now more cheerful and less introverted than before, was a testament to the love and care she received from the Wick family. As Mrs. Wick turned off the light, leaving Ariana to her thoughts, the young girl whispered a good night to her little bear, a simple yet profound gesture that underscored the warmth and safety she felt in her new home. In the quiet of the night, a silver-white light suddenly appeared, casting a soft glow in the room. Beside Ariana's bed, a little bear stirred from its slumber and scampered to the window, its movements catching Ariana's attention. She opened her eyes, initially startled by the sight that greeted her. An albatross stood by the window, its presence unexpected and slightly intimidating. Ariana's initial fear was evident in her wide, dark eyes, which seemed to swirl with unease. Ariana, the albatross spoke, but the voice was unmistakably John's, warm and familiar. John! Ariana's fear dissipated instantly, replaced by surprise and joy. She hurried over and opened the window, allowing the albatross to enter. The bird surveyed the room with a keen eye. It seems you're enjoying yourself, John's voice observed, a hint of amusement in his tone. I won't be able to return for Christmas, but I'll make sure to prepare your presents. Remember to hang your socks. As he spoke, the silver light enveloping the albatross transformed, coalescing into a faceless human figure before Ariana. The figure reached out, gently stroking Ariana's hair with a tenderness that belied its ethereal, featureless form. If you need anything, don't hesitate to write to me. I'm always here for you, the figure assured her, its voice a comforting echo in the room. With those parting words, the figure reverted to the form of an albatross and took flight, disappearing into the night through the open window. Ariana stood by the window for a moment longer, watching the night reclaim its stillness. The encounter, though brief, left her with a sense of warmth and reassurance. She knew that no matter the distance, John's presence would always be a beacon of light in her life. Chapter 598, Hufflepuff's Secret and Grindelwald's Arrest. The Patronus had returned. However, to call it a Patronus might not be entirely accurate. John believed a more fitting term would be a substitute. He had managed to store his own emotional magic within it, transforming it into something akin to a doppelganger. As he observed the silver-white figure bearing his own likeness, John mused thoughtfully. It resembles something from Ravenclaw. Indeed, what Ravenclaw stored within the paintings bore a similarity to John's creation. "Can you use magic?" John inquired. "Of course," replied the silver figure, who then snapped his fingers, causing objects in the room to levitate. "I believe you'll be of great assistance to me," John remarked, extending his hand for a handshake. The silver figure shrugged, its body beginning to dissipate into a shimmering silver light before merging with John. "It's an incredible sensation," John noted, moving his hands experimentally. "Your exceptional creativity reminds me of Salazar," a voice commented. John turned to find a woman whose presence in the Star Club had gone unnoticed until now. "Yet your boundless imagination is akin to Godric's," she continued, her blonde hair and centuries-old dress marking her as someone from a bygone era. "Helga Hufflepuff?" John recognized the woman, then glanced at the recipe on the table. "It appears I was mistaken. Hufflepuff, too, harbored her own secrets." John chuckled, while Hufflepuff regarded him with a tender gaze. "I never expected to encounter a child as unfortunate as you," she said, shaking her head. "Me?" John pointed to himself, laughing awkwardly. "You're mistaken. I'm far from pitiful." "No, child," Hufflepuff approached, gently caressing John's cheek. "You've been robbed of your sense of taste. Such a cruel punishment." John's smile faltered, and he replied, taken aback, "You're the first to notice. I believe Rowena is aware as well, but for her, taste never constituted a form of pleasure," Hufflepuff observed, her voice filled with pity. "You've nearly forgotten the joy of savoring food." "The sacrifice, for me, was a fair exchange," John stated indifferently. "I may have lost my sense of taste, but I've gained friends." "I'm here on your behalf," Hufflepuff clarified, shaking her head. "The entity that stripped you of your taste is formidable, but I wish for you to experience the delight of delicious food once more." "I'll do my best," she promised. "Hufflepuff, do you know what's worse than losing your sense of taste?" John posed a question. "It's regaining it only to lose it again. The memory of that taste would haunt one like a dream, driving people to desperate lengths to recapture it, ultimately leading them astray from their original pursuit." John declined her offer, preferring the ambiguity of his current state over the risk of experiencing loss anew. "Your wisdom in such matters is heartbreakingly mature," Hufflepuff remarked, visibly moved. "What have you endured?" "Battles, redemptions, gains, and losses," John summarized with a smile. "Together, they constitute life. Though Hufflepuff House prides itself on treating everyone equally, you, in particular, deserve my commendation," Hufflepuff acknowledged with a nod of satisfaction. "You are the finest Hogwarts student I've ever encountered. Slytherins would admire your magical ingenuity. Gryffindors would appreciate your bravery in exploring the unknown. Ravenclaws would respect your wisdom, born of hardship. And I admire your loyalty and tolerance towards your friends." As Hufflepuff's form began to fade, revealing the hidden recipe, John approached to retrieve the cookbook. "A gift from Hufflepuff?" he mused. Amused by the approval from the four founders. He was likely the first to achieve such a feat in a millennium. Deciding to safeguard the recipe, he planned to share it with the Society of Stars, a gesture that might even earn him an invitation to tea from the Ministry of Magic. Hufflepuff had one final insight to share. Slytherin's admiration for John stemmed not only from his magical creativity, but also from his ambition. "I never claimed my sense of taste was gone forever," John reflected, his gaze fixed on the recipe. John pondered deeply, his fingers brushing thoughtfully against his chin. Among the legendary founders of Hogwarts, only Salazar Slytherin's consciousness had yet to make an appearance. Slytherin, renowned for his unparalleled mastery in the dark arts, remained elusive. John speculated whether Voldemort's visit to the Chamber of Secrets might have led to an encounter with Slytherin, possibly causing his consciousness to dissipate. Alternatively, Slytherin's absence could be attributed to John's non-pureblood status. Nevertheless, this mystery no longer preoccupied John's mind. His current focus was on deciding which magical creature's bloodline to integrate next into his own. So far, he had successfully merged with 6. The Fire Dragon, granting him formidable physical strength, the Invisible Beast, enhancing his vision, the Boggart, bestowing upon him the ability to perceive fear, the Basilisk, carrying the essence of death, the Phoenix, offering rebirth, and the Spirit of the Black Lake, ensuring his immortality. Despite these incredible abilities, John recognized gaps in his powers, particularly his less-than-adequate apparition skills. What should I choose next? He mused, contemplating his next step. December brought with it a blanket of snow, covering much of Europe in a frosty white. In a Polish city, an elderly man with a white beard and hair was diligently shoveling snow off his roof, wearing sunglasses despite the winter chill. Suddenly, his neighbor's house exploded, sending a figure soaring into the sky on a broom. As a dozen individuals vanished with a pop, snow cascaded from the rooftops. The old man, removing his sunglasses and wiping them clean, gazed at his broom, pondering the possibility of flight. Moments later, a wizard appeared, casting a spell that momentarily froze his mind. When he regained his senses, he found himself inside his house, the television broadcasting news of gas leaks and the importance of regular pipeline inspections amidst a series of explosions. For Grindelwald, the battle cry echoed as a saint fell, defeated by a spell. The Ministry of Magic was engaged in a fierce operation against Grindelwald, once a formidable force in Europe. Despite the challenges, they were determined, with aurors equipped with amulets to block attacks. The director of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement reported the situation, highlighting the impact on nearly 100 muggles. The Polish Minister of Magic, displaying a visionary leadership, insisted on continuing the fight against Grindelwald, emphasizing the importance of protecting not just the wizarding world, but the entire globe. Grindelwald will plunge the Muggle world into war, and they will understand our actions, he declared, planning to coordinate with the Muggle government to manage the aftermath. The international wizarding community, alarmed by the aggressive tactics, sent representatives to Poland, hoping to curb the radical measures. However, the atmosphere shifted dramatically when the director of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement announced Grindelwald's capture. The room fell silent as the white-haired villain was brought in, bound and levitating. His name, once a symbol of terror across Europe, now marked a significant victory. The Polish Minister of Magic, witnessing the culmination of their efforts, allowed a small smile to grace his lips, a testament to their unwavering resolve and the dawn of a new era of peace. His face became expressionless in an instant as the drama unfolded. Chapter 599, Zowu, the Celestial Guardian. John stood before a myriad of choices. Unicorns, Zowu, and various birds and snakes, each with unique abilities, were all tempting. The unicorn, known for its purity, could enhance one's mental strength. The Zowu, a celestial guardian, possessed the coveted ability to traverse space. The allure of the birds and snakes, with their diverse powers, was hard to resist. After much deliberation, John decided based on his immediate needs, planning to secure the magic blood of the remaining creatures at the school year's end. Uncertain if the opportunity would present itself post-graduation, he knew he had to choose wisely. Securing the magic blood is crucial, John thought, aware that danger could strike at any moment. He needed to bolster his strength swiftly. Reflecting on his rapid advancement in magic, especially after his venture into the dark dimension where he absorbed energy voraciously, John felt confident. "We're closing in, Grindelwald," he muttered, his eyes narrowing. Previously hindered by a gap in power, especially against Voldemort, ascending to the 7th level of magic would solidify his status as one of the world's most formidable wizards, rightfully earning him the title of the Second King. Upon entering the Star Club, John was greeted by an unusual sight. 2 little golden figures engaged in a playful wrestle on a round table, surrounded by cheering golden spectators. The scene was lively, with one of the figures skillfully throwing its opponent off the cliff edge of the table. The victor, basking in glory, was suddenly scooped up by John, who was intrigued by the sounds it made, a new development for these rune-crafted beings. "Open your mouth," John instructed, fascinated by the golden veins resembling nerves within its mouth. This observation led him to realize the numerous enhancements these little figures had undergone. Initially intended as protective cores, the golden figures lacked the energy sustainability of magical creations like the horned snoring beast and risked dissipation outside the Star Club's confines. John contemplated their essence, a blend of pure soul fragments and runes, devoid of blood, akin to an intelligent core. Holding one of the figures in his palm, he mused, I need to make a change for you to fully become a creation of Wick. The little figure, though not understanding, showed no concern. It was content with following John's commands. You will accompany me from now on, John declared, setting the stage for a new chapter in their journey together. This decision marked a turning point, not just for John, but for the little golden figures, now embarking on a path filled with unknown adventures and challenges, under the guidance of their creator. John's declaration, "I will give you a name," sent waves of excitement through the golden figures, causing one in particular to leap joyously. The others, drawn by the prospect of receiving such an honor from their creator, hurried over, each hoping to catch John's eye. To them, John was akin to a deity, the very source of their existence, and being chosen by him was a privilege of the highest order. Selecting one of the golden figures that had accompanied him previously, John placed the fortunate two on his shoulders, their excitement palpable. Observing the remaining figures, who appeared somewhat dejected, John offered a comforting chuckle. "Come with me. I need to make you complete," he said, infusing them with a newfound vigor. They promptly formed a neat line, following John through a door he opened, which led to a realm of breathtaking beauty. Beyond the door lay a vast expanse of space, the astral area, dotted with countless stars that spun in a mesmerizing dance. The golden figures on John's shoulders couldn't contain their amazement, uttering sounds of wonder. This space, one of the 9 mystical doors, was dimly lit, a stark contrast to its vibrant display during the recent battle at Hogwarts, where it had shone brightly, forming a protective rainbow bridge. John, with a casual gesture, summoned a star and placed a golden figure within it. The stars descended, and the figures eagerly climbed aboard, their delight unmistakable. As stars enveloped John, he retrieved a vial of red blood from his pouch and mixed it with magical essence. The blood, vibrant and full of life, mirrored the vitality of its source, the Zulu, from the Forbidden Forest. John watched as the blood transformed into a large cat with an unusually long tail, marveling at the resemblance. "Come, drink this," John instructed, bringing the golden figure and the star closer. He then directed his attention to a nearby pile of magical materials. Consuming the magical blood, the transformation began, causing a surge of magical energy that radiated from John, shaking the surrounding stars and nearly dislodging the golden figure. With a groan, John harnessed the rampant magic, channeling it into his wand. A blast of energy surged from the wand, targeting the pile of materials. John's command, "God's bodyguard," was accompanied by an intense purple light in his eyes, which then erupted into shockwaves, melting the materials into a spectrum of colors. The golden figures, touched by the shockwave, underwent a transformation, their bodies expanding before exploding into golden runes that filled the sky. As the molten material merged with the runic script, the runes endowed the material with limbs, and golden veins enveloped the newly formed bodies. The transformation culminated with John's body radiating a silver-white light, enveloping the starry sky in a mist of light. Burly figures emerged one by one, their creation marked by the end of the magical blood and the acquisition of Zou's characteristic blessings: flexibility, speed, teleportation, and enhanced danger perception. John, however, did not immediately attend to his new creations. Instead, he stood in silence, absorbing the silvery white mist back into his body. When he reopened his eyes, they flickered with a mix of black, silver, and purple. Reflecting on the ordeal, John acknowledged the toll that creating so many beings at once had taken on him. "I didn't expect that creating so many at once would nearly overwhelm me," he mused, flexing his fingers. The silver mist had tested the limits of his soul, but fortunately, he had emerged without serious harm. This time, the experience had been a close call, a reminder of the potent forces at his command. John's latest creation was markedly different from his previous endeavors. Previously, he had never encountered a spiritual crisis during the creation process. This time, however, the challenge of simultaneously bringing more than 50 entities into existence had tested his limits. If not for his profound mastery over magic, he might have inadvertently transformed into one of his own creations. "Fortunately, everything turned out fine," John murmured, relief evident in his voice as he gazed up at the dimly lit starry sky. With a graceful motion, he reached out, his hand brushing against the stars nearby. As if by magic, the stars began to shine with a luminosity akin to that of the moon, casting a gentle glow over the celestial expanse. The little golden figures, initially dazed, gradually rose to their feet. The stars they had scattered in their confusion now soared back into the sky, reclaiming their places in the cosmos. Observing their bewildered state, John stroked his chin thoughtfully. "I believe a refresh is in order," he decided. Without warning, scales enveloped his face, and John's form expanded dramatically, culminating in a roar that reverberated through the starry vault. The little golden beings, startled by the sudden display of power, underwent a transformation of their own. Their bodies swelled in size, and majestic, deer-like horns sprouted from their heads. What were once charming, diminutive creatures had now evolved into formidable, fully armed warriors. Reverting to his human form, John surveyed his creations with a nod of approval. "Now, you truly deserve the title of Divine Guards," he declared. Ed. One of the newly minted guardians, Shenwei, scratched his head in puzzlement, unable to comprehend how John had managed to shrink back to his original size. His confusion only deepened upon noticing an armored figure standing nearby. John, observing Shenwei's befuddled expression, couldn't help but cover his face in a mix of amusement and resignation. "It seems you'll need some time to adjust," he conceded. "Let's name you the Star Spirit Guardians," John proclaimed, setting the stage for their new identity and purpose amidst the celestial realm. Chapter 600, Level 7, Bottleneck. The little golden figures, known as Star Spirit Guards, possess a unique ability to sustain their magic power through the celestial energies. Unlike most beings, they require no sustenance, thriving solely on the power of the stars. In their Protoss form, these beings resemble golden children, full of joy and laughter, a state that allows them to conserve energy most efficiently. Their second form, the Divine Guard, is a marvel to behold. Clad in white magic armor, adorned with gold-lined patterns that form protective magic circles, these guards can negate incoming damage with ease. The armor, ceramic white yet incredibly durable, can withstand forces far beyond its appearance. Black dragon skin covers their arms, golden blades protrude from their shoulder armor, and large horns capable of channeling magic for offensive purposes adorn their heads. In this form, their resistance to dark magic is unparalleled, and their strength is formidable. John, witnessing the antics of these divine beings, couldn't help but feel a mix of awe and exasperation. He watched as two divine guards playfully headbutted each other, while another tossed his companions in the air as if they were mere balls. "My perfect guard," he muttered, covering his face in dismay, observing their childlike innocence. As he was about to express his frustration, John's attention was caught by a white orb of light emanating from one of the guard's horns, shooting towards a star and causing it to burst like a firework. Shaking his head, he called for order. "Okay, stop everything." The playful Protoss immediately ceased their activities, though their unfamiliarity with their forms led to a few comical collisions. "Okay, line up," John instructed. After a few minutes, the group managed to form a somewhat orderly queue. He then called forth the two guards he had previously selected, noticing the subtle differences in their appearances that distinguished them from the rest. Addressing the guard with a chest pattern resembling a red bud flower, John declared, "I named you Hector." Turning to the other, whose arms transformed into swords through magical energy, he said, "And you will be Hermo." The newly named guards leaped with joy, momentarily forgetting their powerful forms and causing a bit of chaos before reverting to their Protoss state. John realized the importance of allowing them to practice their transformations to avoid future mishaps. Hector and Hermo were appointed as his bodyguards, and together, they set about tidying the astral area, while the other Protoss ventured off to explore. Integrating Zuwu blood into his being, John had acquired a coveted ability. With a simple gesture, he sliced through the air, creating a portal that bypassed Hogwarts' protective enchantments and led directly to Hagrid's cabin. Stepping through the portal, followed closely by Hector and Hermo, John was greeted by the sight of Hagrid dragging a Christmas tree from the Forbidden Forest. "Fly," Hector remarked, pointing at a crow. "Bird," Hermo added, speaking in a language that was not English but rather an incomprehensible, childlike gibberish. The two guards continued to chatter behind John, who pondered if this was the language of the Protoss. Upon noticing John, Hagrid, puzzled, mentioned hearing something. John reassured him, "You heard right," and inquired about the Christmas preparations. Learning that Hagrid had several more trees to collect, John offered his assistance, much to Hagrid's initial protest. However, before Hagrid could finish his sentence, he was interrupted by the sight of John's unique companions, leaving him in awe. John was about to refuse when he noticed the two diminutive figures behind John suddenly grow to an imposing height of 8 feet, as if startled. The armor they donned radiated a white light, imbuing them with a sacred aura. Hagrid, taken aback, managed to utter, "What is this?" John, with a mischievous grin, casually explained, "As I mentioned, they're guardians. Though, you might as well call them Protoss guardians," he added. "The best part is, they don't require mana to sustain themselves. They thrive on the power absorbed from the stars." Hagrid, still in disbelief, remarked, "God, you're full of surprises. This is the second thing this year that's going to keep me up at night. The first was you defeating Voldemort." Meanwhile, Hector and Hermo ventured into the Forbidden Forest, emerging with 2 large trees in tow. John chuckled. Magic exists to serve wizards, as he helped Hagrid bring the Christmas tree into the castle, transforming the Protoss Guardians back to their original smaller forms. The tiny creature nestled in John's pocket, gazing up at Basil, who was scrutinizing it closely. "You created this?" Malfoy asked incredulously, eyeing the creature. "It looks as fragile as a puff of velvet." John corrected him. "They could knock you out for 3 days with a single punch, Draco." He intervened just as Malfoy was about to prod Hermo with a fork, emphasizing the creature's deceptive strength. The Christmas holiday was approaching, and Malfoy planned to escape the confines of Hogwarts for a romantic getaway to France with Astoria, leaving Daphne under the impression that her sister would join her in Chelsea to study cooking under a renowned chef named Ramsay. Neville looked forward to spending the holidays with his family, cherishing the time to make up for his parents' absence. "All right, but I have a task for you," John said, finding himself alone at Hogwarts once again. He proposed, "Train the Protoss Guardians for me. Each of you will take one." The Protoss Guardians, still in their developmental stages, struggled with transformation without external assistance. John hoped his friends could aid in their training as he planned to dispatch a few to France and the United States. Despite the Star Society's members being idle, John harbored doubts about Malfoy's capability to train them effectively. Malfoy, noticing John's skeptical look, bristled. "Who do you think you're looking down on? I have a knack for teaching." John sighed. "Okay," though he remained concerned. Malfoy, feeling both aggrieved and insulted, especially by Astoria's hesitance, resolved to prove John wrong. He was determined to train the best Protoss Guardian, despite the skepticism surrounding him. This resolve, however, wavered when he witnessed a Protoss Guardian effortlessly demolish a stone larger than itself with a single punch at the Star Club. Malfoy's focus shifted from training to ensuring his own safety. Astoria found the Protoss Guardians endearing, despite their formidable appearance when transformed. That night, John didn't return to his dormitory. Instead, he visited each Protoss Guardian at the Star Club, ensuring they didn't inadvertently harm anyone. Suddenly, ding, magic power upgrade successfully. Current magic power, level 7, echoed in his mind. John exhaled, his breath turning into a purple flame. As he summoned the panel, his gaze fell on the magic power indicator, now grayed out. No trace of joy crossed his face. "A bottleneck?" he mused, staring at the level 7 displayed. It seemed he had reached his current limit of magical power. To advance further, might I need the Elder Wand? He pondered, contemplating his next steps in his quest for greater magical prowess. John stood at the pinnacle of the wizarding world, yet satisfaction eluded him. He was acutely aware that the hierarchy of power extended far beyond the 7th level, reaching into realms barely understood by even the most learned wizards. At this critical juncture, John found himself at a bottleneck, a threshold that demanded to be crossed. To break through would mean transcending the limitations that bound even the most powerful wizards, achieving a level of detachment and freedom hitherto unknown. Failure, however, carried the weight of a starkly different fate. He could either ascend to unparalleled heights or become ensnared in the same trappings that had once ensnared legends like Grindelwald and Dumbledore. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but John understood that the key to surpassing this impasse lay in relentless self-improvement and an unwavering commitment to pushing the boundaries of his magical prowess. The prospect of becoming akin to a deity within the wizarding world was tantalizing, yet it was the journey, the relentless pursuit of knowledge and power that truly drove him. He was determined not to falter, aware that the choices he made now would determine whether he would soar to unprecedented heights or remain forever bound by the invisible chains of potential unfulfilled.